Wow, this is no longer good morning. This is good afternoon, Sussex Squad Nation, Sussex Squad World. Oh my God.
Did the clocks fall forward or did they fall backward? I don't know.
I think it's backwards, I think.
And we still missed it.
And well, there's a lot going on. There's an elections coming up this Tuesday. So everyone must do their due diligence. They have to do their work as a citizen of this country and make sure everyone goes out and vote. Call your neighbors, call your friends, call your family. All of us knew these type of families that, just sitting like, what difference that's going to make? Well, believe me, it will make a lot of difference. So we need to basically, this is history and motion. From the royals, what's happening over there, to Harry, showing up at NATO, sort of, even if it was via
Virtually.
It's been an incredible week, but we have 2 more days to go, and I certainly know that I'm working very, very hard on my part to do what I'm supposed to be doing as a citizen of this country, and that I don't take for granted, with everything that comes with being a citizen of this country. I think this is my right.
Uh-huh.
As an American, you would not know this with this accent. To make sure that, things happen in this country and that we move forward and keep moving forward, hopefully not backwards. So, how are you guys doing?
Doing well. The same as you said. When you were saying that, actually, you got me thinking of we probably need to dedicate a whole entire service someday to the word of civics. As I know you are an emblem and a symbol of that, Lady Sussex, in terms of what does it actually mean to not forget about our civics, but to actually live them. But yeah, like you said, it's been crazy busy. But happy to be here on this beautiful Sunday, albeit a bit chilly and albeit a bit behind schedule, but all good.
Wonderful. And for all of the best people, we don't have a show if we don't have them, is our co-hosts. How are they doing?
No, they are doing quite well. So Connie just popped in. So hello, Connie Bomber. I'm not gonna do the famous show.
Bonsoir, Connie. Ça va, hein?
Yep.
Ton mari, alors, ça va, hein? C'est bien?
C'est bien.
Okay.
Susie
Hello,
Q,
bonjour.
Church Nelly, Overcomer, like there's Cinderella, there's all kinds of folks. Jessica Foreman, they just keep on rolling in. So hello and good morning to all of you. Well, not even good morning, like good mid-afternoon.
And to that bit about voting and civic duty, we have a lot of our co-hosts who are sharing that they have already gone and voted.
Absolutely. Vote early if you can. Because you know what? We don't need or want to have to find out the result in 2025. We want to know the result now.
That's right.
Right now. And so one of the things that, we've been talking about is with the possibility to have a prayer vigil sometime tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Where we pray and tell the story of the Americans and where we come from, where we're going, in terms of, the Black experience. And that pretty much get us to where we are right now, where we, in our generation, get to see, the first, well, I will argue not, but first biracial woman to enter, the royal castles of Windsor, the biggest, England. I don't know. I'm just, you know what I'm saying.
Do we?
to our first biracial, woman to accept a nominee to hopefully become president on Tuesday. So it is a very difficult, and it's a very tough week. So many people have gone and not get a chance to actually see that moment. And the person that I'm thinking about, which I'm sure we're going to be mentioned, it's Royal Sussex aunt. And I don't know why looking at this woman remind me of my aunt. And just the thought when he was talking about her last night, the fact that he was not going to be able to call her or have tea or just just her calling him and telling him that, what, please explain to me what's going on in the, with this news about Harry and Meghan. Obviously, she was very, in tune to what's going on. It's quite touching for me personally because I know having a first biracial black woman as president of the United States, so what that meant for many of the women who are now probably, with us this moment on chat right now, and the work they have done to pave the way for us here, wherever they may be around the world, and to Royal Sussex Aunt, which I'm sure would have loved to be a part of that. So I certainly will be thinking about her. I'll be thinking about my aunt on Tuesday night. So.
There's a lot happening.
There's a lot
it's a
happening.
Very heavy moment.
There's a lot happening because it is on their shoulder all of us stood.
Absolutely. That is without a doubt. We would be nowhere without standing on the shoulders of our forefathers.
Yes. So it is my condolence to, my brother from another mother and my friend and someone that I adore to pieces. And I could hear the somber, I could hear it in his voice last night, even though he put a front and, sort of being himself. At least he tried to. But you can detect that it was heavy for him, especially it was yesterday and today it's his birthday. So bittersweet. So I think we should move on, and we will certainly celebrate him and continue to celebrate him throughout the show. So let's move on to Church and Alley report, because my girl, we got to continue praying for her as well too. And so, yeah.
That's it. So Church Nelly, good to see you in the service. Hello. And the report. Of course she's here.
She's here?
Of course she is back. So this is fantastic. So there's actually quite a bit in the report today. And as Lady Sussex has already mentioned, on October 31st, they actually had Harry took part in a meeting with NATO. And this is more or less kind of the quick press release of what had happened, and directly from Invictus Games Foundation. But they were given the opportunity to brief NATO and their military committee at NATO's headquarters on the dedication to supporting the international wounded, injured, sick service members and the veterans through sport. Harry appeared through video conference, and he could be seen actually in his home office, and then had some very sweet photos of their wedding, and everybody was very happy and definitely pointed that out. The reason why I saw that, because I missed it when I was actually looking at the video, I was paying more attention to him than what's behind him. But actually, I saw that on Marie Claire, as well as People. Basically, all the other press basically saw very quickly that there was a big photo of he and Meghan on their wedding day just over his shoulder. So it was just nice to see that quick shot out. But it was also very nice just to see the level of respect and attention that he was getting in such a momentous and serious organization. And I believe, who was it? I can't remember, but one of the squaddies, we were watching their video and was mentioning while he was doing a briefing to NATO, William was like holding a folder, like walking down the street or something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The contrast could not be so different, and I think we're gonna get into it.
Speaking of the folder, I believe what that folder actually came from was Prince William's campaign to end homelessness, and the TV documentary is actually what that whole thing was from. And one reviewer actually described it as dismal television. Is actually what that's from.
Wow,
yes,
that's bad.
Yeah, exactly. So I got this from Newsweek. So the show pitches the Prince's project as an effort to continue his mother, Princess Diana's legacy by trying to eradicate homelessness, and featured footage from his childhood of mother and son working together to help those less fortunate than themselves.
The same son that says that, his mother was paranoid. Right.
Oh, well, I mean, there's
allegedly
the hypocrisy here is thick, but we'll get through this.
Got it.
So to that end, actually, is Marianne Levy from iNews was perhaps the most scathing in her assessment, arguing the royal needed to grapple with political causes behind the rising level of homelessness. For if homelessness in the UK is to end, we need to know why it is at an all-time high, she said. We need to know about the cutbacks to social services, how the NHS is struggling to provide frontline care and the burden to the general practitioners, and we need to know about the investment in and the building of social housing. Of these issues and the many more that have contributed to the crisis, William has announced his intention to solve, but there was nothing, literally nothing. It made for dismal television. And that was actually from her.
Well, forget about the fact that, sort of why there's homelessness or all this, reason. But think about the fact that, they even charging them rent.
See, you're jumping ahead.
I don't want to jump ahead, but, it just kind of dawned to me, you got to start somewhere. At least they could have started from there, not charging them rent.
Or giving a break. How about even fixing the houses? Like, there's a lot of things they could have done, but they haven't done.
I'll take anything, but, before you can start talking about, stop homelessness. And first, you have to understand what's the cause of it.
Well, I think that was her point. Her point is that...
So find out the cause of it. I mean, it's probably would be suit him better as a very wealthy man, not just to try to end it. He certainly can with all the money and everything, that the power that they have. But at least finding out the cause. I think people would be less critical if we went to it that angle.
Well, the thing is, his family is the single largest landholder in England.
That's what makes it so bad. But we're going to get into it.
That's just yes, we are going to get into it. And first and foremost, I will say Arnett McCluskey. I always look at George for pronunciations because I'm completely butcher names. But thank you so much for the super sticker. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And thanks for the show. So speaking of which, actually, getting into the Sunday Times.
Sorry, who gave us a super sticker?
You're going to make me mispronounce that name.
You have to.
Arnett McCluskey.
Oh, that's a very nice
It's
name.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I wonder if, wow. Sound like, Stephen, last name. Very, very close.
Stephen
is Fiakaski.
Oh.
Polish.
Really?
Sound very Polish. No? What?
Not at all.
Why not?
I mean, I'm not saying one way or the other. It's just that's funny.
Fiakaski. Yeah.
All right, Arnett, you are now forever going to be ingrained in our minds as being associated with Tchaikovsky.
Yeah. Not Tchaikovsky. No, I didn't say that.
It's not Tchaikovsky.
I'm saying it's
one of her one of her very dear friends. His last name was
Fiakaski.
Fiakaski.
No, Fiakaski.
Fiakaski. So yes, that's basically the tie.
I missed it.
Yeah.
Stephen Fiakaski.
Yeah,
yes.
that's her very friend.
That was my best friend who no longer here.
Yes, he also unfortunately passed of cancer quite some time ago.
Yeah.
18 years ago?
Not 18 years ago. Well, please, not at all. About 10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe.
10 years
maybe
ago.
12. Anyway, so anyway, getting back on topic here. So we were talking about the homelessness problem, and we were talking about what's going on and basically what the royal family and the firm could do in order to kind of help lessen the blow or perhaps kind of mitigate some of the damage. Well, apparently the Sunday Times and Channel 4 dispatches also had that same thought and have been doing a really deep expose over 6 months about the details of what's going on behind how they make their money. And most specifically about the property estates owned by both Charles and Prince William, and the fact that they're actually completely tax-free and the business deals they struck in order to maintain their wealth. The king is said to be worth at least $610 million, according to the Sunday Times. So this whole thing is called the Duchy Files. That's what this report has been called and being known as. But it's really interesting because you can actually get in very deep depth in terms of where they actually how they get paid, where they get paid from, what are some of the sources of this capital that's actually being, produced by them. And the thing is, this is over and above the sovereign wealth fund that they actually just get given to them That's basically
Right.
part of it. So this is completely separate from that, and also tax-free, which is just kind of crazy. Like, I mean, we were talking about what they could do. How about just even simply taking taxes on this money would be something, and fairly substantial. But anyway, so I'll just read you more or less kind of really the depth of different streams of revenue and what they're actually getting paid for. So the Duchy Files actually show the royals charge for things like the right to cross rivers, to offload cargo,
Yes.
to run cable under the beach, to operate schools, to operate charities, to even dig graves. That's basically, they're getting paid from all of these things. They earn revenue from tolls, ferries, sewage pipes, churches, village halls, pubs, distilleries, gas pipelines, boat moorings, open cast and underground mines, car parks, rental homes, and wind turbines.
I wonder how much money they have charged your family.
Oh, yeah, really. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they operate as commercial landlords while having the special agreement within Treasury exempting them from paying tax on any of the corporate profits I just mentioned. The duchies are not directly funded by the taxpayer, but leases and contracts in the king and prince's own names show that they're actually making millions upon millions of pounds every single year by charging the army, the navy, the National Health Service, prisons, and schools to use their land, rivers, and the seashores. The royals' formal duties, palaces, and official households are paid for each year by the sovereign grant that I mentioned, right? So this is actually completely separate from that. And this is actually funded by an agreed percentage of income from the government-run crown estate. And it makes a managing land surrendered by the monarch 260 years ago. So they basically, by surrendering kind of the quote-unquote monarchy, 260 years ago, they get paid 132 million pounds.
This is too much.
That's what they actually get paid.
I don't know how to
away
do it.
and apart from all of this. So now when you look at the particular duchy themselves, the Duchy of Lancaster, which goes back to the king, they raised, or basically the profits from that was 27.4 million pounds last year, just for the king.
Are those all alleged, or is
No. This is all fact. They literally can pinpoint every single property.
Okay.
And William actually made 23.6 million pounds. And they can use this money for anything. This goes straight to their pocket. They can use it for private houses. They can use it for personal income, for staff, for vacations, whatever it is. This is completely non-disclosed cash, goes straight in their pockets. Now, the duchy's annual reports disclose that only basic details of assets that they actually hold, but they, being the Times, have obtained reference numbers for 3,536 different properties for the king and 1,874 different properties for William. So that is
this is so heavy
bunch.
for me. This is
That is
just
a bunch.
This is insane. Talking about scandal.
Yeah, it's nuts.
To me, I
and then they just asked for a raise. Remember this year they just got another 50 million pounds.
When we talk about scandals, this should be in every page of magazine, papers, and TV.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the fact is, now, how hypocritical is it that William is now like sending this puff piece about trying to end homelessness when he basically has all this?
But you know what?
And it's tax-free, literally tax-free. Any of those taxes, any money out of that could have gone back to help these people.
I have a comment about the timing of this. Because from what I understand, I don't know if that is the truth, but there was a delay on that report coming out, and everybody was wondering whether or not that, if it's because there is a possibility of them sort of, remove some stuff or request for some stuff to be removed, allegedly. But now I am thinking that could be true. But a big part of it could be the reason why the report is right now. 2 days from now, hopefully, we'll be elected a first woman president. And if that were to happen, hopefully that happen, the news everywhere going to change. what's happening right now. You would not be hearing about this.
So basically, it's almost like the Friday night dump.
It feels like
they
that.
can throw it out now, and then it'll be overshadowed by the news that's going to happen next week.
That's why I wonder. I mean, it could be either way. Whichever way this election goes, it's going to history and making in so many ways. And that's all people going to talk about from Europe, Asia, anywhere around the world. It's, what happened in this election. So I wonder if them asking to delay, if that is the truth, or why the reason why there was a delay, if it's not just for that, because we are 2 days away and this report just came out, and, most people probably not paying that much attention because they are paying all attention to what's happening in U.S. here. Because we know, what happened here, the effect, everyone will feel it. It doesn't matter where you are around the world.
It is definitely a very big topic everywhere, I will say, and it would not surprise me. And the one thing I didn't, yeah, it's possible. It is definitely possible. The one thing that I will say that I didn't mention already is also the fact that a lot of these properties are also substandard.
Yeah.
So they're also not up to date with the latest codes and making sure that they're properly insulated or actually have the proper infrastructure in place, such as heating, cooling, all that good stuff. So, I mean, even doing that, they're just bad
horrifying.
landlords on top of all of it.
I think one of the content creators say something to the effect that, it's probably best to be homeless than and have to live with that kind of health issues, that could come from the mole infestation and everything else, allegedly.
Yeah, it's just,
if we to believe those pictures.
Yeah, it is just, it's incredible, really. When you think about it, when you really put your mind to it and be like, okay, well, who do they represent, who they really are and what they actually should be doing, and the fact that they can't even bother to fix up properties that they actually have. That's nuts.
Anyway, let's move along, please.
The last piece that I'll have for Church Nelly is apparently there's still the eternal question of where in the world is Meghan.
Oh, dear Lord. Here we go.
So it appeared in the headlines again, this time from the news.com.au. And the headline reads, Harry and Meghan have not been seen together in the U.S. for 85 days. So
I thought
the
they
fact
didn't want to hear
the fact that they're literally counting
but first
down
of all, that is not true because, for Harry's birthday, they did that tennis thing that, they did. They also went to the bookstore that they had that function in, and they had just traveled. They have 2 young kids, and there's Halloween to prepare for, there's Thanksgiving to prepare, because, our Duchess is a hands-on mom, a hands-on wife. She does things. I mean, besides, everything else that, she take care of her husband. So that's what she's doing, holding it down, holding the house down, because this is what we do as Black women. We hold the house down.
At the end of the day, they are not really public figures. Like, they're not required to do this.
Exactly.
They can do whatever they want. They don't have to go out and take a photo for you.
Exactly.
They don't have to do that.
But you have to understand their strategy here, right? Every time she come out, it means ching-ching for them.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
well, that's just it. That's
this is coming up the end of the year where there's many Christmas gifts need to purchase, perhaps an engagement ring, perhaps renew them, their mortgage, whatever it is that they're doing. And she's a cash machine.
So it's the H&M bonus, is that what you're saying?
That's why they're looking for the bonus. They're looking for something to be able to write. You know what I'm saying? It's just what it is. It's all about, we need some money because nobody else is not even celebrity is being wrote about the way those two been right about.
Yeah, just the
constant. So you can just imagine. They're just a money machine.
Yeah.
The other thing, is that the flip side of that, which is even what you said, is what they're claiming is not even true, right? They have been seen together. They've been doing
of course.
Things. But if it were true, what that would actually be is more of a case of the media telling on themselves, because when you have people like Harry has explicitly said about the danger that what the media is doing, that it creates for him and his wife, part of anyone who's in that position of sort of prestige or awareness on an international stage, I think it's actually formal policy for high up officials in the U.S. government is that you don't travel on the same place, in the same plane or wherever as your spouse.
That's right. I mean, that
Actually,
is
just
like
from a physical safety perspective, if you're not seeing them together, maybe it's your fault.
exactly. And then also, too, I thought that Ted didn't want to hear from them. They need to go away. It
Yeah.
wasn't. I thought
She's
I
starting
thought
a
they're
whole
not
new
popular.
business.
So what? But
the
I
whole
thought
thing
that's
is
what
just
they wanted
ridiculous.
it from them. So
They have to say
just-
something.
they have
Again,
to say
it's just
something.
clickbait. They're
It's
just looking to cash in. That's all
Please,
it is.
Megan. They're just begging. They're all fans.
They're literally
like
begging.
Tina and Michelle used to say. They're all fans.
Yep.
Okay.
And our co-hosts have been on a tear in the chat. So thank you everyone who's adding there. One to call out though, because I know you'll appreciate it, Lady Sussex, because it is the truth, and we're going to try to cover some of them today even, but Lavertha August, when she joined on, said, "Hi everyone, boy, it is getting hard to keep up with all of the skeletons falling out of the royal closets."
It's truly.
And I wonder
bones
why,
are coming
because I
everywhere.
think, in my opinion, they make the biggest mistake. And now you get to see.
And I do have a thought. It's probably wrong. I think that what you've kind of shared as a potential reasoning behind the timing of this, the Duchy Files, is probably more likely the case, at least likely the case in terms of what they were thinking. But I'm also maybe thinking about unintended consequences and things backfiring on them. Is the timing of its release coinciding with more or less the election here in the U.S.? If the election goes in the favor of Kamala and we elect our first female president and biracial female president, that also could have the effect of people on the global stage seeing that change is actually possible to that degree.
That's right.
And then now there is this foundation of, all of this stuff that's going on over in the UK. And we can combine that with this confirmed truth that change is possible. What do you get when you bring those two things together?
The ripple effect
up
of it,
backfiring.
whichever way it goes, is going to be so. It's a very good calculated thing to actually put this a few days before the election. Yes, that news is going to be buried because maybe for weeks and maybe for the rest of the holiday season, all we're going to hear and talk about, is hopefully first female president. It is going to be everywhere. And unfortunately, this massive news would be buried. But it will come back up.
Let's see.
It will
Let's
come
see.
back up.
Let's see.
Because now people are going to be inspiring for change. People are going to want to have change. There's a lot of skeleton that's going to start coming out. And that is all around the world. The message this election can be sent for every sort of head of state will be huge.
What I think is also going to be interesting is depends on the way. Well, if things work out and Kamala does win, if she wins by a notable margin, that's going to make it even 10 times more powerful.
Absolutely.
Because it will be a resounding message. That
Well,
is being
then
sent.
this is the reason why I don't have no sleep and I work very hard.
So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that resounding victory is what we're looking for.
Like how First Lady Michelle Obama said, do something. And it's about doing something, and we all can do something. I know, again, I'm speaking about my politics because I certainly don't know you guys' politics, and I don't want to bring you into this just because, you guys, the position you guys find yourself in. So I get it. But anyway, these are my opinion. This is me saying, this is me doing, and I don't expect, for you guys to sort of speak about your politics. And here.
Of
and
course.
so.
But I will just
that's
say
it.
on that note, I really appreciate this contribution from our co-host, Cinderella, who's added stay calm, Allah, and carry on, Allah.
Amen. Amen.
I like that a lot.
Amen. 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 Amen.
So-
Amen. Yes.
So, getting on to Connie Bummer Community Update.
That's right. And one last thing that I want to say is that, her election will define so many things for the Indian people. And that who's very often that, I feel like almost you don't hear from them. You don't hear. And there is a huge, massive Black culture there in India that many people don't talk about. And hopefully, and I pray God that whether it's in India, whether it's in Brazil, whether it's Argentina, all these places, and we very recently seen that culture in Colombia. Because very often when you speak about this, whether Latin countries and in all these different places, you think of people very different who look different. Like you don't think of Africans, right? You don't think of dark skinned people. And so I think for at least some of that race relationship when it comes to people of color to come together and pretty much what Megan have done when she entered the House of Windsor. Because at that moment, so many little black girls, whether they were biracial, whether they were just dark skin or light skin or whichever, I remember that moment. I remember what that moment represents. And so, and I know it's going to be the same for many of Indian little girls that whether that live here in the States or in India,
girls,
because so
girls
many
and women
things,
generally,
so
honestly.
many things were taken away, just like Africa from India. So it will be very interesting how powerful that moment will be all around the world.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to it, and especially if I'm lucky enough, God keep my mother's alive enough Tuesday to be able to dress her up and just say, girl, anyway.
So yes,
Let's go.
yes. But as I mentioned before, I do think actually it's going to have a very, maybe not to the same extent, but it's going to have a notable impact on girls and women too. Just because
huge, massive.
representation
The women movement,
Yeah.
and also the fact is that many black women who have started so many of these movements who very often don't even get credit for it,
For sure.
because when it does pass around, usually is the Caucasian women that who's benefiting from this. And so I don't want to get too much into politics because it's really not my thing. But all I know is that in terms of what we represent in the world as women, and women being, oh my God, they've been through a lot, especially when I'm thinking about black women in general. Black women in general, what they have been able to do and continue doing every day, all the time, and don't often not only don't have the credit for it, but also they've been dismissed constantly and been killed. The woman that who sort of changed gynecology. The fact is that black woman, it's one person that I will be thinking about what they have done to her. There's so many incredible women that pay the ultimate price. Black women. They have experience in that they have done things too. And yet, we still not the beneficial of those experimented, of that sacrifices. So it is a very powerful and a very deep, deep moment for me. And something that I will reflect on this coming up Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, further to what the last point, we won't have time to go into too much detail. Maybe I can't remember if we talked about it once before, but it is something that everyone should know about if they don't already. Is that story of Henrietta Lacks?
Oh yeah, that's crazy. It's a crazy story.
It is.
It's a crazy story. But I did, before we jump into Connie Balmer, wanted to say thank you to V Brain, Connie Balmer, as well as Sylvia Fielder, because they all gave super stickers. So
thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
All three of you guys.
You guys have
Awesome.
no idea that what sort of, because the way our structure of our show is very, really hard to monetize anything at all. We can't. First of all, we don't have the numbers. Secondly, that we don't have what is it that you need to monetize? Oh, we use a lot of content, that other content that allowed it not to happen. So to have that support and tell us that, we are wanted here. So we thank you guys very, very, very much.
Truly.
For sure. So getting into the Connie Bomber community update, first and foremost.
Raise a glass, you've made it another year.
Ow! Happy birthday!
Have a laugh, crack a smile, even shed a tear.
Sussex, why yo?
It's your birthday. Pop the cork, pour the flute, make a wish, and don't forget to count the
I have no idea what the song says.
It's long. They talk over it.
Okay. So,
My brother.
happy birthday, Baron.
You have to play it again. Because I need to sing. I'm making my debut.
You still got a minute left.
This is my debut.
The trip around the sun, because
Your voice got lower.
We love you.
coffee or tea, cream and sugar. Is it time to open presents? Friends and loved ones gather near. Raise your glass to another year.
Happy birthday. Love you, Royal Sussex. Love you, love you, love you, love you.
But the sun will rise again tomorrow. Raise your glass, I think we've had too much to drink.
Happy
Someone's had too much to
birthday.
Yeah, they're trying to get us to sing. I have absolutely no idea what the words of this song is.
And they say your age like wine.
But I can definitely express the sentiment of happy birthday, Baron, Royal Sussex. So have a fantastic next year.
Did-
Friends and loved ones gather near. Raise your glass to another year.
Oh my God. Baron
you
must
go.
say, oh my God. Those are the people I put in.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What embarrassing.
Yeah.
Well,
that was it.
now everybody see I goofy and you have all of me. Now I sing. Oh my God.
Yeah, that is
I just thought
that is a
about it.
rare
I
that's a
just
rare
thought
blessing
about
you
it.
guys got.
2,000 people
Yeah.
going to actually hear me.
Start hearing you singing.
Oh my
There
God.
you go.
I just crashed the internet. Not in a good way.
Exactly. So, but truly, truly happy birthday. And then also on that same thing, a little bit more somber note, but also deepest sympathy and condolences, Baron, in
right.
regards to your aunt's passing. We already talked about that at the very beginning of the show, but certainly wanted to say that here in this particular section because you are, one of the leaders of this community and certainly need to take the time for that.
One public service announcement that probably everyone in the listening, most of our co-hosts will already know, but if anyone doesn't, he does have a wish list.
Yes, it does.
On his channel that you can find.
I did check it out.
For those birthday gifts. So
What did you get him?
well, that's for Baron to decide if he wants to share.
What did you
Yeah,
get?
you don't want to. You don't just spill the beans.
Oh, did I?
You gotta let
Sorry.
him. You gotta let him.
Yeah, you gotta open it. You don't just blow it out.
Oh,
You
that's
gotta
right.
let him get it. My goodness.
Oh,
Yeah. What's going on?
I don't know.
So, but yes.
I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no. He needs to go and he can choose to share as he likes. So, and also on that note, as always, this is kind of the more general section of the broadcast and of Connie Bomber Report, but also just prayers. So we need to remember everyone who basically has sent in kind of their requests. So certainly for Black Queen, for Dorothy Ross, for Church Nellie, Chef Sandy Love, Harry and Megan, and especially for their safety. So certainly
And
wish
their
for all
staff.
those things.
And the people
their
that they work
staff.
out
Absolutely.
work with. Yeah,
Absolutely.
And
So
Connie adds lit for Sussex as well.
Yep.
That's
so
right.
For all of our squaddies, certainly praying for you all.
And for Connie's husband, what a husband to have that who sort of, alongside with your wife, supporting an incredible cause. So I raise my glass to
To Eve
Eve
Bomber. That's right.
Bomber.
So thank
What
you
is
so
a
much for
nice
that.
name. Thank
That's
you,
right.
Connie, for everything you do for this community and for supporting this community and being so far away.
Absolutely. So that does it for kind of the general kind of Sussex squatty things. Next, we get into actually the news section, which I think would actually be very interesting. We talked about it a lot already. You've actually mentioned it more specifically. But the fact is, elections have consequences.
Sequences, yes.
So what we're talking about here, now again, here in the U.S., one of the most important elections probably in our nation's history is just 2 days away. And for those who don't know how important this vote is going to be, keep in mind, the last time we voted in 2020, 4 states were decided on less than 1% of the overall vote. So
Yeah.
that means less than 10,000 people actually decided the outcomes of those states' elections. That's 52 electoral votes. That's huge. That was enough to almost swing the election. So everybody get up, everyone get out.
Call your friends, call your family.
Absolutely. The
If
thing
they
is,
are American citizens, they need to vote.
That's
or
right.
they don't have the right to complain.
That's right. So we have been very fortunate that we've actually been seeing, and all of you guys have been doing a great job like we have to already go out and vote and do early voting. So congratulations on that. It's one of the biggest early votes we've had ever in our nation's history. People are crushing it. I think we may actually be near the amounts of for the entire election for the early elections.
And if you can donate as well too, please donate. We need every cent, every penny. I don't care if it's $5, if it's $2, whatever you can afford to do. It is very, very important. There's already a lot of issues with the poll and a lot of fighting, and people are just, what else they call them, poll washers and stuff like that. But we just need to do what we need to do in our part. And please, women in general, please understand the issues. Understand what is at stake here. Understand the moment. Understand the moment. Or in my opinion, you don't have any, you already, depending on how you vote, you're already, in my opinion, giving that right. So please, women, I'm not telling you how to vote, but please vote. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but please vote.
V. Brame just actually mentioned that 72 million people have already voted.
Thank you.
72 million. So,
Thank you. I just
that's
want
it.
people to exercise that right. Probably, in my opinion, the biggest right or power you can have is your vote.
Without a
So
doubt.
vote.
That's it.
I cannot say it loud enough. Vote. If you are 18 years old, mom, pops, have a talk with them. Tell them how important it is to vote.
That's right.
You can't say it any louder, but you could sing it.
Oh, I wish I could hit those notes. I was only able to sing because there was something playing. You know how, like, when you're in your shower, you think that you sound exactly like the album you sing.
It's great acoustics. Yeah. By the way, speaking of singing,
Yes.
Church Nelly did make the point out the truth that the Stevie Wonder's version would have been incredible to play instead, which is true, 100%. But
Yes.
that goes to what you're saying about monetization and all of those challenges. So we have that song. But on the note of birthday, just because see it from the co-hosts in the chat, wanted to say a belated happy birthday also to you, Majesty Sussex. Who mentioned that he was first, followed by Anne from Duchess of Success.
Oh, happy.
Both came before Baron. So
Play it again.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, boy.
There we
The glass, you've made it another year.
Happy birthday. Missed it.
Happy birthday. Have a laugh,
It's the
crack
delay.
a smile, even shed a tear. Because it's your birthday.
just pretend it's Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
You know what? I could picture her right now on Tuesday night, pop up the bottle of champagne, and her dancing, Church and Ellie, of course I'm talking about. And she put like that Stevie Wonder. Oh, why am I imagining that in my head?
Yeah, the first thing I
That
think
she's
about.
dancing. Like, I could see so many of black women in general, and I don't even, just going to have a party like it was 1999, like they say. I just could see that moment in my head.
Gotta visualize it first, then make it a reality.
I know.
So that's why.
Yeah.
Vote.
Because I know I will. I know. I mean, I'm going to be a fool and just really, it's going to be bad. My mother's going to have to.
Yeah, I pity your mom, honestly, because you're going to make her get all over the place.
Oh, my goodness.
But I will say, though, now it just completely escaped my mind what I was actually going to say.
You will say something.
I will say something,
Eventually.
but it'll be later. It'll be later, apparently. So it's
Okay, so we have a show. Come
we
on,
have a show.
people.
Exactly. We have
Well,
a
with
show.
that, we'll
Oh, I know what it was.
Yep.
Cookies and cream.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
for your
Thank
super
you.
sticker.
Thank you
See,
so
I
much.
knew there was something
Cookies and
really
Cream.
important. I was like, I have this thing, and it's because I wanted to thank you so much, Cookies and Cream. So what's
Yes.
up?
Thank
Wonderful.
you, everyone, for
Oh, and I know what the other thing I wanted to say is, whenever I think of Church and Nelly, the first thing I think about is that video we played last week.
I know.
It's actually the image
The visual.
because that was just hilarious.
You guys are so bad. Yeah, we'll play that for her again for the time.
Yes, and with that, we'll move through the last part of the pre-service service, so we can get into. There's a lot
That's
coming
right.
after we really formally kick things off. Just with the reminder to everyone of thank you so much for everyone that is listening. We've now gone. Let me look at the clock. It has now been. How long have we been on here now?
47 minutes.
48
No.
minutes and 30 seconds without once telling people or asking people to please like, share, and subscribe. Because we're
That's
terrible
right.
YouTube creators.
Please.
But please do all of those things. Thank you for those who are tuning in. Thank you for everyone who also helps to remind us to do that as well. Thank you also specifically to our not only our subscribers, but also our members. We love you dearly, and thank you so much for your support. And to shout them out, as we always do, it is Patrick O. Marcel, Marvel Walker, R.R. Carter, V. Braham, Antonio TC416, April Showers, Church Snelly, Black Queen, Kay Castillo, Eve Balmer, and Connie Balmer, Sylvia Fielder, V. Thomas, Lady Rose, Bryce Thompson, the one and only Royal Sussex, and Lydia Washington.
I love Lady Rose. I watch her all the time. I love her hats. You know, she wears these incredible hats, and she just looks like a Barbie doll. She's just so beautiful.
And there's quite a lot of comments and amazing things that were shared following last week's service and song. But just again, because there's so much that we're going to get into, I will just call out one that I think we're all, especially here, are proud of.
Yeah.
It is humbling to have someone like Baron say that. But Baron commented last week, said that these Sunday morning services are giving me a wealth of knowledge. I'm incredibly grateful for the work you're doing. So, especially to you, Lady Sussex, for all of the work that you do behind the scenes to make these services possible.
I don't know about, because, you know, let me tell you something about my brother Baron that I've never met, but that's from another mother. This man is incredible. Not only smart, well-traveled, well-read, and his brilliance is just like, it's, as far as I'm concerned, really unmatched. So I love the acknowledgement, but no, he's the best who have done it so far. So, but thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you also to everyone who has been supporting the other initiative that we've mentioned a couple times that Charles and I have been advancing, and can share a little bit more detail about it. But especially a special shout out to a few of you: R.R. Carter, Ghislaine Monestein, Majesty Sussex. Thank you all so much for the support that you've been providing us on Planet First Action on the social channels as we are getting more content up and out there. We really deeply appreciate it, because we see all of those just as much as we see all of the comments and chats and everything that comes through for Lady Sussex.
It really, truly would be really, really nice, guys, if you guys can go to their channel and sort of subscribe, because the work that they are doing, and especially what's to come next year, God willing that, you know, we have our first woman president, everything is about to change planet-wise, whether we are there yet with it or not, whether we believe it or not. But in terms of how we live, technology, everything's going to change. And it's good to have people that, you know, we feel comfortable, maybe perhaps even trust, to actually sort of interpret some of these things that's happening, because you're not going to have it, you know, explained to you. Not all of it's going to be explained to you in a way to understand. And so please, you guys, it is really important if you can, if you have not yet subscribed, just go into their channel, give them a thumbs up, subscribe, and also, sort of follow them on their IG page, because I mean, you guys have no idea the body of work that these two gentlemen here that I'm privileged to have around me every week that doing, and really because their mission is to make sure that with everything that's about to happen, that people like ourselves, sort of the unserved communities, have a seat on the table. And this is really what are they fighting for. It's no different than what, sort of Megan is fighting for the women cause, and Harry is fighting for so many different initiatives. But we know very often when this big revelation, big stuff started happen, they use our name a lot, they use our community a lot, but we get left out. So we need to be right in the forefront, advocating, putting the words out. And so please, guys, please, I'm begging you guys, help them do this work, because it's so important.
Thanks.
So very important.
Thank you, Lady Sussex.
And so please make sure that you put on.
Yep.
Yeah.
They are the link to the YouTube channel as well as to the Instagram page are in the chat for everyone to click on. It's also up on the screen just in terms of what the handles are. And just to share a little bit about what building from Lady Sussex just shared, and put better than either of us could have, I think, in terms of that request for support, why we believe it's important, and really the mission behind Planet First Action. But just as a sort of a topical thing that has even just came out today, there was headlines about research that is not often some fringe happening, but is now federally funded here in the U.S. That is specifically going to be focused on how we can recreate our entire bodies, including our brains. That is what the research is.
Yeah.
In terms of addressing neurodegenerative diseases and things like that, but also specifically to extend life. That is crazy. That is a crazy headline to me, outside of the fact that it is even crazier because it's truthfully at the point where it's getting federally funded here in the U.S. by an actual U.S. agency, right? So what you were just saying about these technologies, they're not something that is some far off distant future. They are literally here today. They are
here.
now. And to your point, that equitable, just inclusion for all.
That's right.
Know about it, to partake in it.
I mean, I wish there's things that obviously, guys, I cannot disclose here. But let me put it this way. Our school system is about to change. Well, many part of our school system's going to change. And some for the better. Some will take time to catch up to how we live in our home, to how we work. There's so much that is happening to even companies who talking about conversation about having their own nuclear plant to power AI, their AI. So these are important informations that all of us going to need. And you need to have it from a very, not only sort of, at least having the conversation. You don't have to believe them, but you at least they can highlight this stuff, and then you can go and do your own research as you're supposed to be doing, regardless where you get your informations from. It is important that we heard something and then we look into it. That's because right. Everybody could have a very different take once you read something or hear something, whatever that is. We all could come out, seeing something, hear something very differently. So it is really important that, you do your own research. I highly recommend it. But please, guys, help them do this really incredible work. And you guys have some special, I believe, that's coming up for Thanksgiving as well as Christmas. And the Christmas one is about a book, and it's a true life story. I'm putting it out there quickly. And that is major. That is really, really major. And then as well, the one for Thanksgiving, which is going to be interesting just because what Thanksgiving is.
That's it.
to many people.
We're honestly, there's so much, and there's a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. So that's why.
But you guys doing something for tomorrow? I believe it's
Yeah.
a short one.
It'll be a short one, but something just because, again, the importance of what we've just been
Voting.
discussing, the election. And
Yes.
what that transpires. And also building from what was discussed and the momentum from the United Nations a month and a half, 2 months ago, heading into more throughout the rest of this year. But really, even the title for today's service applies to that work because it is history in motion in a lot of ways. And so needing to put it in context.
That's right. So, I mean, literally, if I can give you guys all my subscriber, I will, because just how important the work that you guys are doing, sort of. So I hope, my subscribers, if you're a fan of, I'm sure it's not just me, because I think it's YouTube, because many times people rather listen to you guys than me. So please go and subscribe, give them a thumbs up, and follow them in IG. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And with that, we will move right along with our reminder that even though this is a church service, we are not evangelical. We're not trying to convince anyone to change their beliefs, certainly. And we are also not experts. As Lady Sussex just mentioned, when you hear something, always, and that goes for us as well, to go and get a number of other sources, check the facts that are being presented to you, get different perspectives on how it actually comes to life, because that is the place that we find ourselves in right now in the world that we're living in. And so we are here not to convert and not to position ourselves as the be end all be all, but really to ask questions and to highlight the people who we believe are on the front lines doing the work to make the world a better place, and see if we can't, even just by asking some of those questions, work toward a place where we can all help move in the right direction.
Critical thinking, it's very important. Very, very important. And it's important to ask questions. So let's get the service started. I still love the bells. Sussex Squad, Sussex Nation, Sussex World, my co-hosts, Charles and George. As you guys know, that, we, in a quest to finding out why all those nonsense been happening, because it just doesn't make sense for a woman who's not a head of state or only marry a prince and pretty much been dealing with so much for the last 8 years, and none of it makes sense. And we set out to find out, what does history tell us? Where can we sort of find some sort of answer, or if not answer, something that makes sense to us? Where did that come from? So we start with, of course, let's see here. Revisionist history, right?
Yeah.
And we went to iconoclasm, right?
That's right.
And nobility, which we did last week.
Yeah.
So now we have a new word. And I think it's a word that, I feel like this moment right now, it could have been more right. Representation.
That's it.
The word representation. Just think what it could have been and was some aspect for the short time Meghan was there, and what we continue saying to the royals: representation matter. And I think it's the same voice, that same sentiment this upcoming Tuesday. We hope the world agree with me, I won't say and many of my co-hosts, how much representation matter by elected Kamala Harris, the first biracial Indian and Jamaican woman. And more so than just being a biracial woman, being a woman. And what's that mean for every single woman who paid the wave for her to be in that position right now? And the women that are here, still here, black women, who many of them have changed the course while she was even elected vice president from the last election. And we continue this fight. It's a constant fight. And very often that we don't get anything for it. But we understand the work. We understand why we have to fight. Even when we don't get anything, when we don't get the recognition. In fact, what I have seen and been seen lately, it's see how women are treated when they get stopped by police. Black little girl, 11, 15-year-old girl getting beat up like a man. We understand the consequences of it in our lives, wherever we may live around the world. And people look, many of these countries look into here, America. So I want to look into this word, what it means, where it comes from, because it's such a powerful word to many of us. Representation, Charles.
Sure. So representation was actually first used in the 15th century. And there's two main definitions and a third, but they have kind of a lot of subsegments. So I'll just go through them rather quickly. So the first is kind of the obvious. Someone or something that represents, such as an artistic likeness or an image, a statement or account made to influence an opinion or an action, a dramatic production or a performance, or a formal statement made against something or to effect change, which is actually usually in the form of a protest. The second major definition here is the act or action of representing, the state of being represented, such as the action or fact of one person standing for another, so as for them to have rights and obligations of the person who's being represented. The second is the substitution of an individual or class in place of a person, such as a child for a deceased parent, or the action of representing or the fact of being represented in a grouping, aggregation, or body. So especially like the legislative body. And then finally, well, actually, no, two more. And then the next is actually the participation of people from groups who have historically been excluded or discriminated against, such as race, gender, sexuality, ability. And then the last is basically the action of presenting or describing a person or thing, especially in a particular way.
Okay. Josh?
I am so excited for this word. It is, I mean, it's one of those things that we talk about a lot. We say that we know that it is important, and there's like anecdotal examples that even you, Lady Sussex, you've shared a number of times. Is what does it mean to put yourself in the shoes of this young girl or this young black girl, this young person that can actually see someone, and Megan has said this as well, they can actually see someone that looks like them in a position of power, influence, and what does that open up in terms of their mind of saying, oh, hey, that's actually possible for me. But it's just like, what is it? What is the full scope of this? Like, what is beyond the anecdotal, the example? Like, what does it actually mean? So very excited for this word. I think I'm going to put a plea here. I'll have co-hosts maybe add in the chat if they agree that this is a word big enough to warrant probably multiple services. But
Okay.
But
Well, it will be great to follow that in your next week as well, because, God willing, that, we have the outcome that, I'm so eager want to happen it will make perfect sense to
Exactly.
extend that.
But so there's two journals that I'm going to bring. One of them is very long, so I'm giving a heads up. The first one I'll read though is the shorter one, but it's really, really interesting in the context of what we've been talking about now the last 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks now. Especially when it comes to looking at art and artifacts of culture that we have passed down to us, with which we have to actually reconstruct history of what the past actually was. And so just have that in mind in terms of reading this first one. And it's titled Introduction to Politics of Representation. It's by Evelyn J. Hines. It was published in Mosaic, an interdisciplinary critical journal, in June of 1998 by the University of Manitoba. And it just starts out by saying that few relationships would seem to be more stable than that between the arts and culture. Not only is there an ingrained notion in the Western tradition that there can be no culture without art and vice versa, but also in the form of rituals, monuments, anthems, and mythology, the arts, in effect, are generally perceived to be the repositories, if not the constituents, of a culture's identity. Cultural revolutions are invariably artistic revolutions, and colonies remain colonies until they produce or reclaim their own indigenous art.
Yeah. And that's exactly a lot of this stuff what we've been talking about, and gonna get into why the disappearance of the Black culture, Black in Europe, around the world,
And those
the
artistic
imagery,
representation, exactly.
the artist, the art itself. This is why that is important. And so for me, I'm looking at what you just read so beautifully. It's so important.
Yeah, that idea that says in there, not only is there an ingrained notion in the Western tradition that there can be no culture without art and vice versa, but also in the form of rituals, monuments, anthems, and mythology, the arts, in effect, are generally perceived to be the repositories, if not the constituents, the things that actually make up a culture's identity.
Think about how many museum that you have visited. Just for one quick minute, some of these things that was taken away, they actually were staying where they have found them. I don't want to say much more about that. I'm very happy to enjoy them wherever I am, travel around the world. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is going to different museums. But understand that what that mean for us, and why archaeology is constantly added, try to find stuff. And how do we look at our world today? It's through these arts. How we understand our world today is through art.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also damage us when we don't have the truth.
Well, I think that's actually kind of the point behind that reading, is saying that, which I find actually that's quite profound. Like, you don't actually have your identity unless you actually have the representations of what that was.
Absolutely.
And thereby, what we've been talking about the last 2 weeks, is by having the iconoclasm and basically the removal of a lot of these artifacts that depict Africans generally, as royalty and as basically major influences on society. By taking that away, they basically stole that piece of that identity.
Yeah, and you know what? I can even go deeper than that. And that could be controversial. And people may agree or disagree with me, and it's okay, because those are my opinion, they certainly don't reflect to you two here or anybody, on the chat right now. The effect of it sometimes can be bad, where you doubt your own people, how good they are, whether or not they're worthy. And what I mean by that is that, when you think of artists, how often do we think of a Black artist in terms of, I'm not talking about singers, making noise with the mic. I'm talking about painters, sculptures. When we think of architectures, How often do we think of architectures in Africa? What they have done, past or present, which we are going to show some of research that I have done. And really, we have always been in the forefront of architectures, of art, of language. But even in our own community, we doubt each other. We don't think of each other like this. And that is the effect of it because you don't get to see it. And that's what is making noise. You know, something is making.
I think it's you.
Oh, me? Oh, yeah. That is. Is that chord? Is keep going on.
That's why we have those donations for new mics.
But anyway, I was very deep into what I was saying. It is very important when things been taken away from you. Because if you cannot see it, you cannot be it.
And I think that idea is actually something that this author, Evelyn Hines, who put in this, I think that her final sentence in this opening paragraph is really, really powerful and really important. Because what she writes is that the second half of the sentence, I won't read the whole thing, but just focusing on the second half, she says, colonies remain colonies until they produce or reclaim their own indigenous art. And that is a really important distinction of as the world continues to unfold and history has played out in terms of empires have risen, have fallen, right? Colonies have been established. Independence has ostensibly been given back to a lot of countries, right? But in terms of what we've been talking about over these last 2 weeks here on this service and the iconoclasm movement and its effect in removing the artistic representations of Black Europeans who are in positions of power, who are nobility, and we're going to go through all of those. See a lot more of those even today in just a moment. But that idea that until those are reclaimed, the colonies remain colonies.
Absolutely.
You don't actually have your independence. You don't actually have anything else.
Absolutely. And so, I think we need to go to our first clip.
Well, hold on, actually, and just in case anyone's wondering what all the background noise is, we have additional co-hosts who are joining us right now. A couple of puppies that want to get on the microphone, so there's a little bit of background noise.
They're choosing the wrong time.
They need some attention. But there is another journal to read, and it is quite long, but it is really important, especially as we think about this next part of the conversation. We go through those clips, the final part of that video that we've started and gone through the past 2 weeks. And this is a journal that's titled, a journal entry titled Knowledge, Power, and the Struggle for Representation. It's by Gregory S.J. It was published in College English in 1994. And there's actually, I'm going to read the first few pages of it because it really is that important and highlights the nature of this word and the meaning of representation of like, what does that actually mean in the context of all of this? Again, it's knowledge, power, and the struggle for representation. And he starts out with 2 quotes, the first of which is Paul Marshall, The Making of a Writer, who said, what all of the kids, West Indian and Native Black American alike, with whom I grew up needed, was an equivalent of a Jewish shul, somewhere where we could go after school, the schools that were always shortchanging us, and read works by those like ourselves and learn about our history. It was around that time also that I began harboring the dangerous thought of someday trying to write myself. The second quote was from Edward Said, Politics of Knowledge. He said, although I risk oversimplification, it is probably correct to say that it does not finally matter who wrote what, but rather how a work is written and how it is read. The idea that because Plato and Aristotle are male and the products of a slave society, they should be disqualified from receiving contemporary attention is as limited an idea as suggesting that only their work, because it was addressed to and about elites, should be read today. Marginality and homelessness are not, in my opinion, to be gloried in. They are to be brought to an end so that more, and not fewer, people can enjoy the benefits of what has for centuries denied the victims of race, class, or gender. So those are just his opening quotes, but this is where he really gets into it. And he says, those of us working in the humanities may have grown a bit weary with talk of a crisis, quote unquote, a crisis of representation. Since at least the mid-1960s, the word representation has been subjected to all manner of elaborate theoretical investigation. Psychoanalysts, structuralists, post-structuralists, deconstructionists, feminists, reader response critics, minority and post-colonial thinkers, and gay and lesbian activists have all contributed to the exploding the notion that representation works innocently or transparently. Building on the intellectual legacy of semiotics, which he clarifies is the study of how sign systems are constructed and organized, contemporary interpreters of culture and society are now regularly argue more over how things are represented than over what things really are. I'm going to say that again. He says contemporary interpreters of culture and society now regularly argue more over how things are represented than over what things really are. As we heard from McLuhan, the medium is often the message. And as Jean Baudrillard never tires of reminding us, we seem to live in a world of pure simulations with no corresponding substance or reality beneath them. A view epitomized by the Reagan presidency. We traffic in representation and consume images. Today, the first target of revolutionary uprising is usually the local television status. And the first objects of repressive dictatorships are newspapers, fax machines, universities, and other means for reproducing representations. It follows that the current relationship of academic knowledge to political power can be understood in some decisive ways in terms of a struggle for representation. Let me say that again. It says, it follows that the current relationship of academic knowledge to political power can be understood in some decisive ways in terms of a struggle for representation. This struggle is multifaceted, plural, complex. It includes struggles over the theory of representations as well as over the actual cultural and political distribution of representation. The questions we face might be put this way. These are the important questions. And again, these are the questions highlighting, I think, is important in the context of what these clips are that we're about to rewatch building from these last few weeks. It says the questions we face might be put this way. Who represents what to whom? For what reasons? Through what institutions? To what effect? To whose benefit? At what costs? What are the ethics of representation? What kind of knowledge and power do authorized forms of representation produce? What kind of people do such representations produce? Who owns or controls the means of representation? And what new ways of representation might be better to achieve the goals of justice and democracy in the overlapping worlds of education and politics? And reading that, I'll stop reading him for a second, just comment on it. Just reading that, the way he articulated all of those questions is so important. And so for me, even just him asking the questions was illuminating.
Absolutely.
Because you think about this word representation, there is so much to it. It is part of things of this debate about what things are, what they actually are, but then also how they are represented in each of those questions. Who represents what to whom? For what reason? Through what institution? To what effect? To whose benefit? At what costs?
That's right.
And then what are the ethics of that representation? What kinds of knowledge and power do authorized forms of representation produce? What kinds of people do such representations produce? Who owns or controls the means of representation? And what new ways of representation might better achieve the goals of justice and democracy in the overlapping worlds of education and politics?
Yeah, because then you start thinking about the role of the royal Reuters to what will journalists to historian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you think of all that, and you think of the trolls, and then you have people like us seeking for the truth.
That's right. I think there's even more I want to read from this. But just going back,
because it's incredible. It is important and it's needed.
And before going into the next section, part of what has been important that he's highlighted so far is, and I'm saying he because it is Gregory S.J. It is a he. He says that this important sentence that it follows that the current relationship of academic knowledge to political power can be understood as a struggle for representation. And that is a really important thing. Even what you were just talking about, how the education system is changing, what that even means in terms of how we engage in society today, that there's a relationship there, a key relationship between how we educate ourselves and our children, and the relationship to political power, political economy. And it is, as this author highlights, it is a struggle for representation. And there are all those questions that he's just outlined as it relates to just thinking through, what does it even mean to talk about representation, and what is that struggle? What is the struggle over? And so he goes on, he says, some have argued that the liberal tradition, with its flexible approach to expanding recognition, differently, and quoted, says, for different classes of individuals, provides a good approach to the crisis. The philosopher Charles Taylor, in a rich and powerful essay, argues that we need more carefully to theorize the politics of recognition, especially as it regards the debates over multiculturalism in education and government. Though I do not have the space here to do justice to Taylor's analysis, he writes, I want to suggest that representation, quoted, rather than recognition, provides a more comprehensive framework within which to explore the issues of knowledge, cultural identity, and politics. Classic liberal theory begins with the individual as its primary unit, whereas the current crisis of representation stems from the claim that groups also have a right to representation. Moreover, the language of recognition tends to reinforce rather than investigate the privileged position of those who do the recognizing, while also tilting the emphasis toward personal relationships and away from political economy. And I think there's a lot of really important things that he just wrote in that paragraph, and that idea of even just this, again, the idea of how we talk about representation. Sometimes it can come across as this very individualized thing,
Right.
Its impact on one person. But what he's writing here is that representation actually can and should be much more comprehensive as it relates to just the representation of groups. As we've been talking about the last two services, and we're going to talk about more today. One of those groups being the Moors.
The Moors, but for me, I mean, I'm thinking even much more recent than that. What just happened during the tour of, King Charles III.
That's right.
Okay.
Entire groups.
The entire group.
And this idea that there is the power dynamics, even the how people are recognized, and the difference between recognition and representation, and how those things, how they actually come to life, can in some ways be reaffirming of the sort of the status quo as it relates right now in terms of who has the power to even decide.
Absolutely. I mean, you can even make an argument and think of the trip Harry and Meghan, took, by the invitation of the Vice President of Colombia, a Black woman, and what that trip actually meant. Because again, if I'm thinking Colombia, certainly the African, that type of, sort of, that's not what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? I mean, it could be a little bit problematic when you say it, but this is not what in most people.
Well, that goes to exactly that challenge from the first journal of the art and how things are represented, and those artifacts that we use
That's
to
right.
reconstruct our history. Those are the things that actually unlock ourselves in
Yeah,
terms of who we actually are, where we come from.
We actually one of the things that's happening right now in Argentina, it just exactly that. The fact that they are not even being seen as Argentinian or Argentina.
Right.
They're not even thinking that, that culture is so hidden from public as though they not even existed.
Right.
So these things are actually really happening really right now. Brazil, we're talking about the amount of, sort of Black Afros that are there. But when people talk about Brazil, that's not what comes into your mind.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, I dare to say all these new plastic surgery to make yourself, enhance yourself, being called sort of Brazilian butt implants, Brazilian lips and all these things, but never credited the source for it. Because when you looked at it, you see it, you somehow I don't know. They're thinking of Giselle, the supermodel Giselle. They think of so many different women. In my view, in my opinion, it's so far from what people seeking to have. But yet those are what been representing. Or you will hear that they talk about Julia Roberts' lips. And when you looked at so many of these women or people with that kind of structure, in my opinion, based on knowledge and based on things that I'm now learning even more and more, genetic does play a part of this. And that genetic is that many of these people possibly carry black genetic.
Yeah. And I think it's honestly, that's why I said I think this is a word that warrants probably a couple services. But to the through line from the first journal through this journal up to this final bit that I'll add before we can move on. I'll stop reading. But the first thing was saying that, look, the arts are this embodiment and what actually constitutes our culture. And if you remain colonized, you remain a colony until you reclaim your indigenous art, those actual artifacts, the culture of how you are represented. This author now goes on to say that it is in fact a struggle, an active struggle, in the relationship between education and political power, in terms of how you can even think about who has agency over deciding what is represented, how it's represented, and what it means. All of those questions that we just went through, that there's an active struggle in terms of the relationship between the field of education and the field of politics. And going on to the distinction between recognition and true representation, not just recognizing that someone's there, but actually the representation of them. And he ends this, and I'll leave the journal at this for now and save it for another day. But this concluding thought at the beginning of this says that he says recognition, not representation, but recognition belongs more narrowly to the philosophical discourse of the law and of rights, whereas representation tends to bridge the gap between politics and culture. Representation also raises questions about the relationship between agency, your ability to have agency over yourself, and media, which are crucial to understanding our postmodern dilemma.
That's why, I mean, you see it right now in my lifetime, in my generation, and generation come before, where the black woman body, which I think it's not just beautiful, and yet this is probably a body that was being, sexualized, who has been dissed. And now we have people taking credit for that body. Because the idea so many people credited Kim Kardashian for the sort of revelation of everyone wants to have a butt like her. But where did that butt come from? And who are they emulating? To just the black woman lips. To their future. Because the thing about us, black women, we come in all different form, shape, size, beauty, all different. It's just, we're not just one thing.
And you just actually hit on something that I think is really important to double down on also, is that idea, okay, right now, you say that for the longest time, getting the black female body in particular being sexualized in so many different forms of media. And now, the current trend is actually the inverse of like, oh, everyone wants Brazilian butt lifts.
That's
we were
right.
talking about last service, right? Someone might say, okay, well now aren't they getting representation? Isn't that a good thing?
No.
But this goes to even what this author was just saying right now, is that what is the questions behind understanding representation is who represents what to whom, for what reasons, through what institutions, to what effect, to whose benefit.
That's right.
Representation in and of itself is not a binary thing. It's not yes or no. It is the means by which it happens and how it is done, to what effect, for what reason, to whose benefit. All of those things are things that need to be considered in terms of how that representation.
That's right, because still today, we're not getting the credit where credit is due about our body. It's somebody else us having that credit, us seen like that, us being put in portrait on TV, on, billboard.
I don't know
No.
if credit is the right word. I think value.
Value. Well, thank
I think,
you.
Yeah, I think the black figure, we'll just call it figure because I think it's actually both sides. But I think for black women, I think that and I think it's not even just your body. I think I think it's a cross. I think your body's explicit. I think that's a very obvious thing. But I think generally there's a through line through all of it, just in terms of how undervalued and devalued that black women are. And I think that your physical features are just a single sub piece of
That's
that.
right.
But I also think that it's also the most obvious. Like if you just look at it like rationally, I think you can easily see kind of how this goes. I think, in the last couple of weeks, we've actually seen how that transformation occurred. And it was, I knew a little bit of this, but I did not know the depth. Like I never thought about, okay, well, the reason why people back in the early 1900s and 1800s actually had the buttress around them,
Yes.
was because it was emulating what was probably
right.
happening to English nobility
right.
and European nobility, and they happened to be black, who didn't need it because that's just the way they were built.
That's right.
So it was just really interesting trying to get into the weeds of that, but I think it goes back down to value. Because it's not the fact that you guys want to be sexualized. It's not the fact that you want that credit to be that. You just want the value of people, of understanding that, you are beautiful. Like that's what beauty is, and not trying to attribute it somewhere else. But
For me, the fact is that, we still in a place where we're still talking about first black, this first, like there's a problem for me. The fact that, we're not in every cover of Vogue as often as we should. The fact that there's brilliant, there's gorgeous, there's stunning black models who still have not made the cover. For me, it's a problem.
Well,
And it's also, I think, is the mistake many of us as black people made, that we almost fight behind the curtain sometime and not really demanding, because very often and not, we buy these magazines and we forget that how much power that, we have to demand that, we see more black models, because it did happen in the fashion world. Because up to very recently, because of many black models themselves, people like Iman, people like, there is so many. Naomi Campbell, you could say anything you want about Naomi Campbell. There's so many of the black models, Tyra Banks, who literally fought and fight to change that system. And we continue fighting within, but sometimes we need help. We need help, because it's not enough that, we are buying these designers' clothes. We are doing all those things, but yet we are not seeing ourselves. Granted that we come a long way enough now and sort of on the one way to see plus size model. We just have Victoria's Secret show where we see all different sides, how beautiful and how great and how this and how that. So, yeah, representation matters, but that fight that we're constantly fighting and yet not getting the credit where credit is due, or not being sort of validated, or not being appreciated, as if like, we are a second thing, and they're using all aspects of us to make them look better. Even now, even the caps that, we wear to go to bed.
well, I think it was actually really interesting because, and we should get to the clips and stuff.
Yes, we
too.
do. We do. Otherwise, we'll be here for 5 hours.
Exactly. But
It's
I do
another
want to
marathon.
actually bring up one last point. I think it's definitely different, right? Because what you're talking about now is trying to rebuild the stature and value of black women through popular culture, through the Vogues and through basically the kind of the current media.
Because we are
Hold on,
fashions.
wait. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. That should be done. My point being is that you're trying to rebuild that stature through current means, through how people currently view that culture.
That's right.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reestablish that beauty narrative of what that is. I think the really important thing that we should realize, and I think Black people just generally should realize globally, is that it's not about rebuilding. We don't have to reestablish, because it goes back to what George was saying earlier about this sense of identity. We're trying, it's not the fact that we have to establish ourselves. The fact is we need to actually reconnect and reestablish that identity of what we already were.
I think we try to do that all the time. I think that, the power that was not allowing, that we recognize that, at least for them, the danger of us, sort of connected to one another, which is why very often than not, there is misfighting, miscommunication, everything that is happening or misunderstanding.
That's not my point. That's not my point.
But you can't connect something
that,
when there's a force fighting against you to do so.
Wait. Let me finish my point. What I'm trying to say is that instead of what we should be doing, instead of trying to reclaim what we have to go back and say that, because we're starting at a lower place when the fact is you should be at a much higher place. So the fact is that, the current normative and narrative is saying that, okay, well, Black people basically come from a different place, and basically that they're less than, because that's what American history is about, as opposed to what actual history is, which is the lesson for what we're trying to do and what we've been talking about, is that actually is not African history. That's not true history. And so getting everyone else caught up to what we know already is kind of the task at hand, for people to realize generally and globally that Black people actually have this sophistication. It is, we have driven culture globally, like elevating, like reclaiming the elevated place that basically we had and established ourselves in history. That's actually
I actually think we're actually doing that. I think that's the reason why we are even here. That is the reason why that, many of us, it's sort of supporting, Harry and Meghan, specifically Meghan. I think we are doing it. But I think, again, it's been in a place of to have any type of power. And right now, social media is probably, one of things that, we have to communicate with one another. So I truly believe that, we've been at it. Do you understand what I mean? But we constantly have a force working against us. And so, anyway, we need to move to the clip.
There is actually an incredible contribution from one of our wonderful co-hosts, as always.
Yes.
From Majesty Sussex Report. And I'm just going to read them out for everyone who's not watching the chat, or who may be watching afterwards, just because it is beautifully put. So thank you, Majesty Sussex, for that. He wrote in, says, when a people's culture is erased, they lose not only their heritage, but also the anchors of identity and belonging that connect them to their past. This disconnection breeds confusion, vulnerability. Without a foundation of self-knowledge and cultural pride, they risk adopting values and systems that may diminish their unique strengths and perpetuate dependency. Culture is more than tradition. It's a source of resilience, wisdom, and community. Without it, individuals and societies drift, easily led by others' agendas.
Oh, yes. Please tell it.
It was really, really well put. And I think it goes to that exact idea. And what you've both been discussing just now is the importance of it for a community in of itself, but even that reality of where we are today, the recognition for ourselves, for all of us, as we're kind of going through this and watching how things are portrayed, how they are actually represented, is that there is it's not just black or white in terms of it's not dual. It's not two options. It's not like yes representation or no representation. There is other nuances in terms of how things are represented that have meaningful impacts on whether they contribute to a more equitable and just society, or if they don't. And there is a lot of it that has to go back to that cultural and historical context that needs to tie back to that. Otherwise, it's not actually reaffirming. It's not actually undoing historical wrongs, so to speak. It's actually just perpetuating them. And so there's a lot of nuance when it comes to that idea of representation.
And that's why we are doing this show, because the kind of vulgarity, the kind of hatred against Meghan, we need to go back in history. We need to understand our history to see where is that actually really coming from. Where is that hate coming from? And so we're going to move on to figure out what happened and what maybe perhaps some of the answer maybe perhaps we're looking for. So let's go to our first clip.
We're going to go to our first clip, and everyone in the that's listening in, please, as always, let us know if we have any technical issues with the sound. We'll be waiting, but hopefully it'll all be smooth today.
Oh, God, we don't have that same problem from last week. Hate it.
For now, one must be thinking, if there were so many black people in Europe, where did they all go? And this next section gives us a good clue of what happened. It wasn't just one event that reduced the number of black Europeans to such low levels. It was the compounding effect of multiple trends: the Reconquista, the Inquisition, the forced exodus, and the fleeing of the Jacobites. After the invasion of the Iberian Peninsula by the predominantly black Moors, Europe rebelled against Islam, the new religion brought in by the Africans and the Arabs, the Reconquista. And so, from the 8th century to the 15th century, war and cultural reversal had become the trend. And it is during this period that the brutal inquisitions took place. Their aim was to root out and kill Jews or Protestant converts. During this period, being suspected of being a Jew or a Protestant would be enough to get someone executed. And it is important here to note that in an effort to integrate into European society during the Reconquista, many previously Muslim blacks had converted to Judaism and the Protestant faith, both religions that they found more conservative and thus more compatible with their old Islamic faith. The Spanish Inquisition, established in 1478, was aimed at consolidating the Catholic Church's power by targeting heretics, among whom were conversos, Jews who had converted to Christianity, and Moriscos, Muslims who had been baptized as Christians. The Inquisition employed brutal methods, including torture, to extract confessions and enforce orthodoxy within the Spanish kingdom. During this period, many Jews declared their conversion to Christianity to escape persecution, but these conversos remained targets of suspicion and violence, leading to widespread fear and eventual expulsion. In 1492, the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella issued an edict that forced Jews to either convert to Christianity or leave Spain. This expulsion had a catastrophic impact on the Jewish community, stripping many of their possessions and forcing them into exile. Many of these Jews were Moors that had converted to Judaism to escape persecution. The Inquisition also targeted the Moriscos, baptized Muslims, who were expelled in the early 17th century, further emphasizing the Inquisition's role in religious and ethnic cleansing.
And just as a reminder for everyone who's joining this service but didn't actually watch the last two, this video is now
third.
This is the third service we're doing that's featuring content from this particular creator named Without History, who's done some incredible research. And in the last two services, playing clips from the initial part of that, where he actually went into specific examples of what he described as iconoclasm, not just being removal of icons, but specifically have an effect on removing black representations of the black Europeans who were in positions of power, who were in the nobility. And actually, in terms of even the royalty themselves, that those representations were actually removed, and they were depicted as being white, when in fact, if you go and find these primary sources, which he's quoted throughout his content, that it describes them as actually being black.
And many of those paintings are painted over.
Exactly, painted over. And so this clip, where we're picking up with today's service, is actually how we ended last week. Was he said, okay, well, if there was all of these black Europeans that were in the nobility, that were in the royalty, then where did they all go? And so that first clip here now is him starting out that explanation. There's the first part of two of these things. Of actually, there's a lot of factors, macro and micro factors, that contributed to that.
That's right. That's right. So we should move on to our next clip.
But many of the blacks from Ireland to Spain chose exile to the new land, especially islands such as Jamaica. In the book Origin of the Anglo-Saxon Race, the author clearly shows that from the late 8th century, before the arrival of the Vikings whom they fought, a great majority of the inhabitants of Scotland and Ireland were black. And they are clearly spoken about in historical descriptions, but also in their names: Black, Blackman, Blackman, Blake, Suard, from swarthy, Stuart, Seward, and others. It is these black people who centuries later, though in fewer numbers, became the Jacobites, the supporters of the Black King James, also known as Jacobus. These Jacobites were exported in mass to the new land in the Americas, as it shows here, in the book Jacobites' Gleanings, the Transportation in 1745 by J. Macbeth Forbes. It is in short a passenger manifest of the Jacobites that were taken to Antigua, and when we say they were taken, it means they were forced into exile to the islands. What is interesting here is that both their names and their physical description are given, and as you can see, the great majority are black. William Blake, black curly hair. Douglas Campbell, brown complexion. Remember that Dougal and Doug from Old English means black. So many who carry that name come from old black families. Alex Catanach, black, ruddy, and healthy. And it's not just the top of the list, further down John Kennedy, black. Angus McIntosh, black, very strong. And the list goes on. Although the vast majority of black people who arrived in America came directly from Africa, European blacks, smaller in number comparatively, were forced or chose exile over persecution to the new land. And it is these forces, Reconquista, Inquisition, forced exile, that decimated the large number of blacks in Europe, and their traces were then systematically removed from all icons and representation of influence, creating an illusion of an exclusively European medieval history. One where the Afro-descendant can no longer see himself or herself in the nobility of days past. But equally as damaging, they have created a circle of people who have been born into this lie, have never had the time nor the courage to question it, and who now use it as a justification for ethnic supremacy. And yet, as history shows us, nothing could be further from the truth. And that once again, as they did in 9500 BC when the black Natufians shared the secret of agriculture with all, as they did in from 3000 BC to 500 BC when they taught the Greeks everything they know, the Africans, this time wearing turbans, gave to the struggling Europeans the seeds of civilization once more. And for this, as we shall see in this next section, they were once more venerated as deities.
It's incredible. Again, you see Ireland, you know, I've visited there. Like, you don't think of anything has to do with black.
Yeah. I mean, just as like a total minor, but not minor thing of even, I mean, everything he put brilliantly at the end there in terms of the implications of it that we were facing today. There's the unfortunate reality of how we are constrained by the words that we have and their associated meaning.
That's right.
Because what he says is that they systematically, or all these macro forces ended up decimating the black European population. And then he went on to say through the iconoclast movement how there was systematic removal of how their representations throughout various icons and things like that. And if you notice, what he actually said is that what that created was this illusion of a purely European continent. And that's the thing that it is so challenging, because on the one hand, you understand what he's saying. Because right now, the word European is associated with white European.
That's right.
But the truth of the matter is, it would be purely European if they hadn't done that, because there were black Europeans.
Absolutely.
And so that even using that word right now, you were constrained by saying that European because they removed the blacks. But the fact is, the Europeans were black.
Which is what, again, back to what I've seen maybe a couple shows before last show, is that this issue every time, that if you tell someone you're from France or you're from England or you're from anywhere in Europe, no, you're not. They will tell you in your face.
Yeah.
No, you know, it's something that we're still struggling with. That no, you're not. You must be, like, all the time, people always try to figure out where I am from.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? It's like I cannot really say I'm from this place. I mean, it's even, you know, harder for me because I have this really sort of, I don't know how to describe my accent, just because, you know, sort of I grew up and you know, in a home that, you know, there's so many, we are all intertwined with each other. We all mix. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, you know, just in my mother's side itself, it's like, you know, you have, I mean, you have Jewish, you have Spanish, you have French, you have English, you have so many people. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like my family, it's so blend. We're just not one thing. I mean, obviously we don't do sort of the big Thanksgiving thing. It's not a thing, for us where I'm from. But if we would to have Thanksgiving, it would be like, oh, those are neighbors. I mean, one of the things that, all the time, my mother had to deal with very often. I mean, I have my sister who her first child was so blonde, so white. And she's a dark-skinned woman. It's not your baby. It could not be your baby. Even though my sister have blue eyes, not that make a difference. Just to see the like, genetic work very, very different than we know. You looked at my mother and you looked at her sisters, you probably would never think that, they even relate each other, because my mother come out with the dark one, and based from what I understand from my mother, it's like, there was a lot of question whether they even related. Just the other day, I was watching, like, one of those clip. This black woman literally had to take a DNA test to prove her child, her daughter, is actually really her daughter, because she have 3 biracial kids. She married with a white man, and 2 of them looked very, very mixed, and the third one came out very pale. And she literally decided to, her whole show coming about because she was sick and tired, said, "You're a great nanny." And that's something my sister had to deal with. Do you understand what I mean? Or people asking my mother, sort of, especially at my mother's age, "Are you wearing a contact lens? How could your eyes be so blue?" Like, people can never upset you to say that, I'm from this place, I am this, and I'm black. No, you don't get to do that. And it's everywhere, even here in US.
Yeah.
Like, to a point where sometimes I'm just like, if I don't want to be bothered, or sometimes I just ask, "What about you? Where are you from?" I said, "No, you're not." I said, "No, you're not." And that is the only way to have them leave me the heck alone. Don't ask me any question. And I'm not a rude person at all.
But I think you're not. But to this last clip, what we just listened, and how it ties to the word for today, even, and this point of what you were just describing, like, why is that the case that is happening? It is because, as the creator here put in at the end of that clip, he says that the damaging thing is that it's decimated the large number of blacks that were in Europe, and their traces systematically removed from all icons and representation of influence, creating an illusion of an exclusively white European medieval history, one where the Afro-descendant can no longer see himself or herself in the nobility of days of past. But equally as damaging, they've created a circle of people who have been born into that lie, and they've never had the time or courage to question it, and now use it as a justification. So that goes to that journal about the tension and the struggle and the relationship between education and politics, and especially when it comes to how things are represented.
That's right. It's as though you have this. I mean, there's so many black people that, with red head, that, in fact, that is even blonde. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just what it is. So let's move on to the next clip.
Next one. Make sure we play the right one.
In the book Russian Icons by Father Vladimir Ivanov, recently rediscovered, we find the most interesting collection of Christian icons. It is of high interest for two reasons. Number one, it depicts the various Christian icons as black. And number two, this is not found in Western Europe, but well in Eastern Europe and Russia. This means that black people were venerated as deities from Spain to France, Italy, Germany, and all the way to Russia. In some, all over Europe. There are at least 500 black Madonnas in Europe, not counting the ones hidden in the Vatican, 128 in France alone. And you need to remember that these icons survived multiple waves of iconoclasm. This means that in the past, they would have been ubiquitous throughout Europe, before the great artists like Michelangelo and Leonardo were commissioned to start painting the classic Europeanized face of Jesus that we know today. So then, as always, if we ask the critical questions, if the mainstream historical narrative is true and that black people have never achieved anything of note in history, why then were they depicted and venerated all over Europe? Even more intriguing, what were black people doing in so many depictions, descriptions, sculptures, and plays in Europe at all? For those who have been listening, it is simply because they were present in such numbers and it yielded such influence that even the planned erasure and systematic destruction of the icon survived from Western Europe to Eastern Europe, from Germany to Italy.
Here we go. And again, now think of Meghan Markle. Think of our princess right now. Marry into the royal family of England. And to see what they have done, allegedly, or well, I don't know if we need to say allegedly, when she have Archie. This thing is still bothering me. The fact that, they have removed her name from the birth certificate. It's not something that I can really understand. But when you listen to this, what are we listening right now, and looking at some of those evidence, if we were to believe them, they are the truth, then you can begin to understand that, what they were trying to do. Because maybe perhaps in their mind that Meghan was not going to be the icon that she has become. That they was not going to be as successful as they are now. And maybe perhaps if we can push her away, if she become just a nobody, then that opened the door for us to maybe perhaps at one point just say this kids was not really, because we seen they were doing that. In fact, online, they try to say it's not, but then whose baby it is then? Is it possible they could have even at some point, because they never say it's not Harry's baby. Think about that. Could it be possibly at some point they would say, yes, it's Harry's baby, but it's with somebody else. Just because the kids are light. I know this is speculation by me. I think, no, it's conspiracy. But, it just doesn't make any sense that, you will remove the mother name of her own child birth certificate. So I don't know how to interpret that action, except looking at it in history right now, try to understand the history and asking the question, is that what they were trying to do? Because it happened very early before they even left. And with that kind of sort of vulgarity and pressure to a point where she wanted to unalive herself, maybe the thinking was, at some point, we can put anybody names we want. That is the question that I'm asking. And I wonder how, everyone feels, online right now.
Yeah,
What are they saying?
Co-host, let us know in the chat what your thoughts are in terms of what Lady Sussex was just talking about. But I think too, while they had that, there's something really important about this conclusion, and I think it makes sense why this. I mean, and this creator, to give him all of the credit without history for this production, the research that he did, what he went into creating this video, and grateful to be able to have even watched it. But this idea of there were black Europeans.
That's what happened when you're doing a dissertation.
Exactly. There were black Europeans in significant number. And not only were they there in significant number, they were there in positions of power. And they were not just nobility, they were also the royalty. And maybe for everyone who's listening, a lot of you listen in while you're kind of doing other things and maybe cleaning or cooking or whatever it may be. If you haven't been actually watching, encourage you to actually watch, because this creator, without history, put a lot of effort into even just finding those actual physical representations, how these figures were depicted, what they actually looked like,
That's right.
the things that have survived. But the fact that he ended with this last idea of the black icon itself, that which would have been explicitly the target of iconoclasm, which started as a religious movement to remove those icons. How significant it is symbolically to have those representations. Never mind the ongoing debate that is in a lot of political circles today in terms of Jesus's depiction. Never mind the sort of getting tied up into that sort of thing, but just the fact that they were portrayed as religious figures, even as deities, and that they still survive even after all of those waves of iconoclasm. What that then means in terms of their ubiquity in the past, that is truly something that cannot be overstated in terms of that idea and the importance of it.
And you know what? Oh God, there I am. Want to say something controversial. Again, it's just, I mean, I grew up, sort of, even though I would like to consider, and, I wasn't too bad of, sort of when it comes to, reading and studying and, my head and my mind, Jesus was white.
Yeah, that's what was.
And I
what
should,
you see.
sort of, it's not until very recently, like many people, and they're like, yeah, that's why he's way part of the world where he's from. It is maybe, but, we take it for what it is and then we move on. And a part of us is almost accepting that's what it is.
And there is the importance of that which is accepted subconsciously, even if you know that it's not.
Yeah.
Even if you've got to the point where you are right now, as you just said, ladies, so we're like, it doesn't actually make sense. But there's still the subconscious.
That's right.
Of how that
You
representation
doubting
manifests.
yourself,
Yeah.
you doubting everything that and because there is a level of trust that many of us have with the people that we put our faith and trust on to write these things or to speak about this thing, that what they are saying is the truth, is well researched, and there's like we do that. At least I know I do that.
Right.
Until you give me a reason not to believe what you said, it is more likely that I will believe you, because I think a part of it for me is that I know what it feels like when you are not believe. And so therefore, on anything, what I try to do is believe what someone says until I have a reason not to.
Yeah.
So give them the courtesy that I want for myself.
That's right.
Let's move on to the next clip, please, before I get into trouble.
Before we leave you, here are a few more notable figures of black Africans in medieval Europe. This is a statue of Philip II of Spain. Philip was no ordinary man. His father was Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. In this portrait, we have a count depicting Christian, John George, and Augustus. Christian was a Scandinavian monarch. We have John George, Elector of Saxony. The last one to the right is Augustus, also Elector of Saxony. Their names are engraved on the coin, as you can see.
A description of the Western Islands of Scotland, containing full account of their situation. It says the inhabitants of this isle are generally well proportioned, and their complexion is for most part black. And this is a crest, right? This is an example. I threw this in there. This is the coat of arms of Ivy William, 1485. The Ivy family. In the same book, a description of the Western Islands of Scotland. And we're talking about the Isle of Arran, or the island of Arran. It says the inhabitants of this isle are well proportioned, generally brown, and some of black complexion. They enjoy a good state of health and have a genius for all callings or employ. But we're going to get to some very important parts of the book. All right, so we're going to begin with this person right here, which he's describing as, his name is Charles, known as the Duke of Somerset, master of the horse, of the ancient family of Seymour, who made so great a figure in the reign of Edward VI. I remember, these are the people he's spying on. So these are the Jacobites, all right? We're going to go ahead, all right, and get to this part of the book where it describes what he looks like. It says he is of middle stature, well-shaped, and very black complexion. Very black complexion. A lover of music and poetry, of good judgment but reason, of great hesitation in his speech, wants expression. He is about 42 years old.
Here is yet another, James Vernon Esquire. He was clerk in the secretary's office in King Charles II's reign. He is described as a tall, thin man of brown complexion. But when we look at his Wikipedia portrait, it looks nothing like the man. For all we know, this painting could have been misattributed, but this would mean that they have misattributed thousands of portraits. And at no point in time do these misattributions show a black man in the stead of a white man in a position of prominence. And here we have another coin depicting Augustus, Elector of Saxony. The Saxons were Lutherans, a major branch of Protestantism. And as we mentioned before, many Moors converted to Protestantism to escape persecution during the Reconquista and the Inquisitions. Alessandro de' Medici, also called the Moor due to his dark complexion, he was ruler of Florence from 1530 to his death in 1537. He was also the first Medici to rule Florence as a hereditary monarch. And here we have a fresco depicting a tournament of knights. No comments.
Configuration. And when you see the prophets, you're going to see them as men of color. Notice here his garment is white, but the skin complexion on the prophets, they're all dark-skinned men. Because when you read the scriptures, you always read about the prophets. They always describe themselves as dark-skinned men. And our forefathers, black men, they painted them as that image of being men of color. But what happened? Remember this. 1453, the Renaissance. We're going to go to Spain, the history and art. We're going to go to page 60. We're going to go to page 60. I want you guys to look at this. Now these women are what color? White. What color are their fingertips? Black. Well, they got their fingertips dipped in chocolate? No, they weren't dipped in chocolate. They were hired to paint over the images. Why their fingertips black, but their skin is white? Because they had iconoclasts. 1453, paint over these images.
It's something that, you can ask, there's some incredible painting around the world that, until you put them under a microscope, that you will never know that used to be something else. As someone that, who love art and write so many, read so many things about different type of art, especially, back in the day, artists, there's very often they're not happy with one sort of set of, thing that they done, and they will paint over it, and you're like, wow, that's incredible. And so you can understand why something, how they able to do that. And so what that tell me, at some point, if you scrape so many of these paintings, there's a lot that we may discover.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I want to go further, because the problem that I have, it's how now they describe us in history. Savages, aggressive. They have all these different names that we are carrying, how we need to be seen. Not as royals, not as noble or whatever it is. I mean, we've seen what they're doing to Meghan every single day. The name calling. Anything but who she really is, even in spite of that, she literally have a life in front of the camera since the age of 9. With all the evidence that they have in front of them, they still manage to crucify this woman, calling her every name in the world. And so it's quite understandable. It's not enough that, we're going to get rid of you. But wherever you go, this is how we're going to portray you as. And we see it's happening with Meghan right now. Could you imagine if there was not a Sussex what? Can you imagine if there was not a group of people that was putting evidence out and doing the kind of work that we do? People, in spite of all the evidence, people would have believed it.
Yeah.
People would have believed it. And please say something.
Well, I think that that's exactly right. And I think that this, for me anyway, looking at this sort of historical, this document reviewing history and analyzing history and what we've even been handed to learn from in terms of the effect of iconoclasm and what that's removed. When you talk about the treatment of Meghan, if you go back to the very first service when we started this, which you were highlighting, Lady Sussex, was there is a difference between the abuse that Harry receives and the abuse that Meghan receives. Harry was always going to get something because of the fact that he was the spare.
That's right.
Fundamentally, he was going to get something because he had to look bad to make his brother look better. In terms of that's just the way that family worked, right?
That's right. Or even Diana too.
And even and the difference though is that it's not the same thing in terms of what Meghan, how she's been treated. And there's something that is very important of looking at, trying to better understand the treatment that Meghan is receiving. When you do take that step back and you look at this history, and you look at that treatment, that removal of those representations of specifically Black people in positions of power, in the nobility, in the royalty.
Yeah,
Meghan is not the first.
That's right. And as I've said, and and it wasn't really recently I really truly started thinking about it like that. That Diana, they did not erasing her picture. In fact, now she have her sort of statue in Kensington, right?
Yeah.
And so there's nothing. Yes, she went through a lot because of choices, because of that woman, because of Charles. Allowed this thing to happen. The royal family allowed that to happen and crucified this woman and brings her. And it even, you started thinking, does he have a lot to do? Even then, does he have a lot to do who she was dating? Part of it. That lead to her death. Obviously, we don't know. But
well, Harry insinuated that himself.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, we just have to take Harry as his word. You understand what I mean? Harry said it himself. So
And I don't know. This is not. I'm not going to go out on a limb. I'm going to ask these as questions because that is what they are, right? But if you try to think about the why behind Meghan's treatment and what she is, who she is, what she represents to people, and you look at the difference, and even just that last clip that we just played, I think maybe it was a different island because he went through a couple different examples, but if I'm not mistaken, he mentioned that the island, specifically Scotland, that it was actually most of the people living there were actually of a black complexion. And if I got it right, I think he said that they were generally good at everything, basically paraphrasing. He was like, they were well talented in all these different things that they did. And to what the sort of the journal article that we started with in terms of colonized people remain colonized until they reclaim their art, and their art is their culture and their representations, that Meghan, it would in many ways be someone who would actually be able to be a vehicle to reclaim those representations in not just positions of power, but in the highest halls in terms of
That's right.
in royalty.
But
And that representation of who she is, it's not just about Meghan for Meghan's sake. It's about Meghan in terms of what she represents to this broader historical arc of what's been done and what she could unlock for whole groups of the world.
That's right. But instead, what we hear, and they keep putting in people head narcissists, they giving her all these really ridiculous names, and that make me think the next clip. So let's play this next clip and see.
You caught me off guard there.
Oh,
It's mine, right?
No, it is actually the last of the
the
clips
closing
from-
argument.
It is the
right?
closing. It is the
Okay,
closing
so
clip
let's
from
see,
this-
and then we'll get back again to the name calling. We'll go back to that next. So let's play the last clip.
No, it is not Afro-descendants that should be labeled as historical revisionists. If anything, Afro-descendants have had to summon an inordinate amount of courage and intellectual curiosity to search for evidence that has for too long been denied. Courage to face ridicule in the face of an abundance of images and icons that shout from the frames of history that those who would like to rule by fear have failed to erase their contribution to history. Historical revisionists are these figures of authority who have known these facts for decades, often centuries, but haven't come forth with them. And somehow they have maintained the appellation of, quote, historians, end quote. A true historian has a duty to the truth of the past, and for those who have forgotten, they are gatekeepers of the consciousness of the future. And in this, most have failed us, and they instead rely on a Babel tower of lies and confusing narratives. And now that the knowledge of the African contribution to history, the missing centerpiece to the history of man, is being told correctly, it will do for both black and non-black generation what fake legislations, empty speeches, and the miseducation system was not able to do. Free our minds from fear, hatred, and inadequacy.
And I will argue, when you looked at the amount of work and things that Meghan, our Duchess, had accomplished in her short time as a working royal, it's incredible. And yet we should be hearing that all the time. We're not. Instead, what we are hearing, it's all the kind of name that they have given her all the time. Do you understand what I'm saying? That woman in that short time of being a working royal, and I will even argue, even to now, she's still producing so much things that really, in my opinion, making the royals look good. Her presence, what she brought into the table. Do you get me?
Yeah, and I think that is his. I mean, again, kudos to Without History for an incredible video, and it has been a privilege to go through and just finish the last bit of it just now. And I know there's a lot more to come, even in terms of the series. But that that conclusion of from the very beginning of this, that it's starting with revisionist history and him just now tying a bow on it, that is not those who are going back and re-examining history and looking to even to archaeological, like uncover those artifacts that we depend on to tell our history. It is not revisionist to go back and actually find that black people were actually there in positions of power, in
That's
positions
right.
of influence.
That's
and
right.
And that actually has something like has a real important value, not just historically, but it has incredible value to all of us who are alive today.
It's so.
And it goes to, again, the importance of the incredibly unique position that Meghan finds herself in. And I don't know if for everything that I can kind of surmise from kind of looking on the outside, I don't think it's something that she asked for or wanted necessarily.
No, not at all.
But she has found herself in this position where she
The
really
position,
is
that's right.
unlike anyone else in the world.
Absolutely. And in set, but she's getting all this name calling. And now it's very interesting to see, how, another content creator that was able to have an interview, what they say. It's very interesting. That's nothing to do with Meghan particularly, but that next clip started making you understand and questioning.
The other king?
I'm talking about this one right here. Savages.
That's okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go with this.
Continent literally ethnically cleanse the indigenous population out of existence, kill them on a scale that has hardly been equaled, and refer to them as savages. That's an achievement. Who's the savage? The first time I encountered this was in a little town in Massachusetts called Deerfield. It's a reconstruction of what that little town looked like in colonial America. And in front of each house is a plaque that explains something about this house. And then description. On the 18th of October of 1702, the savages attacked. The first time I saw this, the savages. You come in here, destroy everything these people have, and they are the savages. That's an interesting move.
It is. I hadn't thought of that before.
Think about it.
Do I need to say anything? I don't think there's anything I could contribute in.
No, I think it is an important connection because this strategy is two-pronged. It is both the removal of evidence that would suggest to the contrary of a predominantly white history of nobility and royalty, but also it is then the active and ongoing choice, and it goes back to that journal, the power of who gets to decide what it means when it comes to representation, how everyone else is actually depicted, how they are represented.
That's right.
In terms of
because
the power.
We see now Meghan is back home. She's home, and yet they're still harassing her. They're still calling her name. They're still after her. She's not even over there anymore. You're coming in her space and doing the harassment and try to make people over here believe that she is this person, that she's not. And it's insane because you could see how they erase. I mean, like we go far back, even to the Roman time. Many people will be surprised because, if when you walk around Europe and you're visiting these places, you're certainly not thinking black person.
No, that's not what's taught.
Not at all. And that's what makes the next clip so interesting. So let's play the next clip.
What if we say that before and during the transatlantic slave trade, black individuals in Europe reached one of the most powerful positions in Europe? It's known that black people were part of the royal court and were part of the elite class and nobility in Europe. However, it's little told that they became kings, monarchs, and emperors. But how is that possible? How has this remained hidden until now? Well, it turns out that historians deliberately suppress these records, hiding them and erasing them from history books. The reality is that even a Roman emperor was African. Welcome to a new episode of Black Afric Diary, a channel where we talk about Black African history, culture, arts, and civilization. It's a place where you will see the real picture of Black Africa, its stories, and the events defining it. In this episode, we will tell you about 10 European kings who were Black. Let's get started. Number 10. Septimius Severus. Septimius Severus was the Roman emperor from 193 to 211 AD. Born on April 11, 145 AD in Leptis Magna, present-day Libya, Septimius Severus came from a diverse cultural background. Leptis Magna, a major city in Roman Africa, was a blend of Roman, African, and Punic cultures, situated along the bustling Mediterranean coast. Severus's father, Publius Septimius Geta, was of Punic and Libyan descent, while his mother, Fulvia Pia, was from an Italian family that had settled in North Africa. This unique combination of African and Roman influences gave Severus a multicultural identity, allowing him to navigate both the African and Roman worlds. The Punic heritage connected Severus to the Phoenicians, ancient traders who established colonies like Carthage across the Mediterranean. His Libyan roots tied him to the indigenous peoples of North Africa, adding further complexity to his background. This mix of influences shaped his early life and his path toward Roman leadership. Severus's political career was defined by his rise through the military, thanks to his strategic brilliance and political skills. In 193 AD, during a period of chaos known as the Year of the Five Emperors, Severus was declared emperor by his troops. His African heritage wasn't a focal point at the time, but his rise was phenomenal in a Roman Empire that spanned diverse ethnic and geographical regions. As emperor, Severus led consequential military campaigns, especially in Britain and North Africa, and carried out legal reforms to centralize governance. His efforts to strengthen the empire's frontiers, particularly fortifying Hadrian's Wall in Britain, demonstrated his military focus. His African background influenced his rule subtly but powerfully. Severus invested in his birthplace, Leptis Magna, transforming it into a center of Roman African architectural grandeur. His construction of the Severan Basilica and other public works in the city reflected his deep connection to his African roots. Severus's reign also left a profound impact on Roman law and governance, shaping a more uniform and centralized empire. His African heritage, while not seen through today's lens of race, set him apart as a figure representing the vast diversity of the Roman Empire. Severus demonstrated that leadership in Rome wasn't bound by geography or ethnicity, but rather by political skill and military might. His legacy as a Roman emperor from Africa challenges conventional narratives about race and leadership in ancient Rome.
Isn't that interesting? When you think about the Romans anywhere in Europe, that's not who you're thinking about. That's not who you're thinking about. And the funny part is, we can even go very recently. There is one person in particular, which Royal Sussex, I was shocked when he highlighted him on one of his very early show. I think, if I'm correct, it was maybe for one of the Black History Month that he highlighted him. Many people don't know, never heard of this man. It's Joseph Boulogne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges.
That's right.
And who he is? He is this, this man was famous in France and England because of his father, that who bought him, descendant of a slave woman, and who become bigger than life, was the best dressed in all France society, was best friend of Mozart. In fact, was Mozart, roommate.
Well, he was called the Black Beethoven.
He was a great fencer, beating everyone.
He was a top fencer in France.
Okay? And he was a composer. And he even take part in the revolution. Well, as a soldier, if I'm correct. And we are just now learning about his music for someone that who love classical music. And I have been aware of this man for a very long time because of my mom. He even have a name, sort of a street name of him in France. But very often than not, you don't hear him at all.
There's a
Or
street
about him. I think that there's a street.
Yeah, there's a street named after him. Not necessarily a street name. Like it's not like
Oh God.
yo. Yeah, there's a street named after him.
Okay.
He might have a street name too.
Exactly. He's a Shav.
Got it, guys. Very, very funny. But his accomplishment, and he was even at some point have teach, Marie Antoinette the piano.
Yeah, actually, I mean, just
Mozart, and sorry, I'm going to say, there is a piece of, his music that's very famous that was, well, I don't want to say stole or take away, but Mozart have used in his own piece.
Borrowed,
whatever you want to call it, allegedly, I don't know, whatever you want to say. But we are just now learning. And his music is now available. You guys could find that on YouTube. You could listen to him.
it's great.
It was masterful. It's great music. But when you think of classical music,
but
you
they
think
just
of,
put
he
out a
was-
movie about him, right?
Yeah,
There's just a brand new movie out.
There's actually 2 different movies that they tried to do.
No, but like a brand new one.
Yes. But you see, when this man was like, he was the Casanova, the lover, the well-dressed person, and was so much, in fact, was a genius, really. And his music, it's incredible. I dare say should be as famous as Beethoven, as Mozart, as Bach, as any of them. And yet we are just now very recently are learning about his music, especially here in America. And then in fact, some big orchestra have played his music. I don't know if they ever actually, I don't know that to be true, but I don't remember, as someone that, who goes to a lot of these things, don't ever remember them say, oh, it's from this man. You just know they play that piece and everything and not really particularly understand where it's coming from. And that was very recently.
Our co-host C. Rogers said that he's a very handsome, gifted man with many talents.
Many, many talents.
And actually,
beautiful.
Just as a fun fact, as we've already shared, he's a virtuoso violinist, an accomplished composer. Most of his violin concertos he performed as a soloist with Le Concert Olympique, which was an orchestra that he also conducted.
That's right.
And as you mentioned, he was connected
and a
to
great opera. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he was connected to Marie Antoinette. But as the point about just a fun story about him being a renowned swordsman, as you've shared, is actually before he became known as a violin virtuoso. St. George was renowned as the greatest swordsman in Europe. He was once attacked by 5 anti-abolitionists, and St. George dispatched all 5 and went on to perform in a salon concert with friends that very night.
Yeah.
Like 3 Musketeers.
It is.
But
absolutely.
But I will say before we get on, I will just appreciate and say thank you to Black Queen for the super sticker.
Thank
and
you,
hello,
Black
Queen.
Queen.
We have not said hello because you joined a little bit late, but glad you could join us today, and as well as Connie as well. So thank you again.
Thank you,
for,
Connie.
That queen joined exactly when she meant to. It's exactly. Exactly.
This thing is getting really, 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 really long. So I think you need to set up the next clip for us.
Sure, the next clip. I am very excited about the next clip because it's one we've been talking about quite a bit here, and it is really, in some ways, a person who's much smarter than all of us, talking about the things that we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks, which is really how do you even think about history, in and of itself, and what does that also mean in terms of the implications for us today as we think about the events that are unfolding around us, and the agency that we have, and the possibilities that do exist. So this is a philosopher on a really incredible program, the Institute for Art and Ideas, by the name, I'm going to butcher the name also, Slavoj Žižek, I believe is how you pronounce it.
You did good.
It's a guess, anyway.
Slavoj.
But it's a very short clip. Would also encourage everyone to watch the full thing afterwards. But just one short clip that kind of ties a bow on this look back at history, what has happened in terms of the iconoclasm movement and its result, and how we maybe ought to think about it with a different or a broader perspective.
Let's hit it.
We are now in an open situation, and retroactively it will become necessary. If there will be a world war, there will be people who will survive it, they will tell the story of how it was all pointed towards this war, we were doomed. If there will not be a war, they will say it was like Cold War, false alarms, and so on. What I'm claiming is that these are not simply illusions. The situation is genuinely open. To understand something, a historical event, you should read it in a superposition with other possible events. When something happens, you should always ask yourself what other options failed so that this could have happened.
Exactly my point.
There is not a, yes, the puppies are very much looking for attention today. There is not one possible scenario in terms of what led to the past happening the way that it did, or even as it applies to today. And it's, again, very topical going and heading into an election. But what this philosopher brilliantly puts is that it is genuinely an open situation. There's a lot of different things that can happen, and how we look back at how history is related to us, how it is portrayed to us, shouldn't be looked at as if that were de facto what was going to happen. Because in that moment, just as things are today, it was genuinely open. There was different possibilities of what could have occurred. And so when you look at how blacks have been removed from historical references, and also when you look at what's happening today, when you look at what's happening to Meghan, when you look at what's happening to Prince Harry, it is important to take that lens of it is genuinely open. And that speaks to the importance of the agency that each individual has in terms of contributing to the truth, amplifying the truth, and speaking out on behalf of those who can't speak for themselves.
And I will say, you're right, but all these things have consequences. And maybe perhaps it's what we are starting seeing right now, the effect of it all, where everyone's at. It's almost to me, now I'm being forced to accept the fact that, all we are seeing the beginning of the end of the monarchy. I'm starting intending that even though that's not where I am yet. Because they fell Meghan so badly. Everyone around the world, even if they would say to themselves, oh, we're not a racist family, we're not, whatever it is that, they've been trying to sell to everyone, and some of us accept it for what it is, okay. And it could be very easy to say, well, those were the past, why should I be judged for what happened? We got all that. But now, what happened now? Because if we were to believe the first biracial woman entered this place, and now you have an opportunity to send a message to the Commonwealth, and in so many ways you just chase her out, and she's lucky she come out of it alive. How is that now you want people to believe you? And maybe perhaps now we are seeing all hell break loose. The fact that, we can have what we're going to play the next clip from Baron and as well Meredith. This is stories coming out of Channel 4, out of the Mirror. And that forced me to put me in the place to be able to ask this question. Is the consequences of these people not having the foresight to see or think that somehow they're going to chase this black woman, this biracial woman out, and everyone going to accepting it when you're living in a world that is changing? Is that what we are seeing? And I think we need to go to Baron to hear his point on what is going on after that report.
You want to do Meredith first, or you want to do Baron first?
I have Baron first on
Baron
my
first.
clip.
Okay.
But before we play Baron, just to close a bow on that last thing, is also as a way of saying thank you. Thank you so much, Connie and Julie, for the super sticker and for that sort of contribution and that idea that what we've just been talking about, sharing that's the definition of cultural genocide. And that is as we've often said, it's frequently important to call things the way they are.
That's right.
And to not shy away from that. But there's a real importance to those words that are used, and the fact that the culture, the relation of culture to representation, to power, to all of these things, and especially in the context of what's happening to Megan, it is something that really does need to be highlighted. So thank you for the super sticker, and also thank
you so much. And I think that, there wasn't really, I don't think they believe or think this is what's going to be the repercussion. And we start seeing the fact that, for what we know in the Mirror to be, and Channel 4, do you understand what I'm saying? And then from the Times, it makes you wonder what are we witnesses now? I know we're not in a moment of history and motion with our election. How is that going to change Europe for this story now to come out? So hit it.
Wow. Scandalous Prince William's moldy, hard-to-heat royal rentals that don't meet standards. Our investigation with Channel 4 dispatches has found that some of William's tenants are at risk of fuel poverty and living in hard to heat, that is, homes with mold and damp. How could this happen? Scores of rental properties owned by Prince William failed to meet the minimum legal energy efficiency standards for a landlord. We can reveal. We found that some of his tenants are at risk of fuel poverty, living in hard-to-heat homes that are riddled with damp and black mold. Our investigation with Channel 4 dispatches has found that as many as 1 in 7 of William's inherited Duchy of Cornwall's residential rental properties have the lowest energy performance certificate, a rating of F or G. That means you may as well have the window open all winter. That's what it really means. Well, pretty disgusting. It comes as the taxpayers is funding the £369 million renovation of Buckingham Palace. And Prince William launches his campaign against homelessness and for anyone having a right to a safe and stable home. One tenant said, the slick PR will stick in the throat of many tenants. He should start by bringing the homes he already owns up to modern standards. So, you know what? I like this because this person is saying that we don't need those little slick videos that you and Kate and whoever else puts out. We need results. We need results. We need decent, affordable housing. What a pig.
Yes. Side note, hearing Baron voice, there is, I hope he is okay. I can hear the mourning of his aunt in his voice. I also know that, he sometimes suffer with allergy where he's very stuffy. And so I'm hoping that is what it is, that he's continue caring for himself and that he do what he needs to do. And if you need time, brother, if you need time, just take that time for yourself. Take time. We love you. We will be here for you. Take that time for yourself if you need it. Because I could hear the emotion. I could hear something in that voice. So I hope you're taking care of yourself. I love you so much. So yes, so to get back to, again, we're going to jump into the next clip. Mary did very quickly, and this is the last clip that we have for you guys because this has been another marathon. So let's move on quickly to the next clip, and then we'll see what we have to see. And
Times woke up today and said, if you think those ratings from the We Can End Homelessness documentary by Prince William were bad, check out these numbers. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this is explosive, extensive reporting, 5 months of reporting from the Times that culminated in this Duchy Files investigation piece, revealed the property empires that make Charles and William millions. The Sunday Times uncovered every plot of land owned by the ancient duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall. We're talking over 5,000 plots of land here. And oh boy, does this tweet from former BBC correspondent Peter Hunt feel even more apt today? He tweeted that William could make a significant impact on homelessness if he accepted a fixed income in return for giving up his vast Duchy of Cornwall estate. Even just for starters, give charities a break that are renting buildings on your property. Here's what's important to know. There are a couple different ways that royals get their money. If you would like a more in-depth look into the cost of the crown, this series by The Guardian from May 2023, around the time of King Charles's coronation, is incredible. And we talk about duchies, we're not talking about the sovereign grant. The sovereign grant is funded by, quote, an agreed upon percentage of the income that the government-run crown estate makes by managing land surrendered by the monarch 260 years ago. David Cameron, when he was prime minister, really sweetened the deal because they can never get less than what the previous year was. They are guaranteed to receive the same amount, if not more. And if it falls short for any reason, the crown estate, the government has to make up the difference. Then there are the private incomes of the sovereign and the heir apparent. That comes from profits generated by duchies. So there's two duchies. The first one is the Duchy of Lancaster. That was previously Queen Elizabeth's. Now it is obviously King Charles. And then when Queen Elizabeth passed, the Duchy of Cornwall, which had previously been Charles, the Prince of Wales's, went to Prince William. What's really cool? It's not cool. They don't pay capital gains tax. They don't pay income tax. They pay income tax voluntarily. The king and the prince both pay income tax voluntarily at the highest level, 45%, but oops, in 2021 to 2022, Charles only paid $5.9 million of an income tax, which amounted to only 25%, but that's because he deducted expenses that he considered related to his official duties. People in Britain can't afford to heat their homes in some cases in the winter. What are we doing here? Will says he does the same thing as his father, but guess what? Since 2022, we have not seen how much they have paid in taxes. And the Queen did not declare how much she paid in taxes. But what's even grosser is the slummy landlord nature of it all. NHS will end up paying the King's Duchy £11 million over 15 years to rent warehouses for ambulances. The Army has to pay to train on Dartmoor, the Navy to moor, and to refuel its fleet. Both William and Charles trained at the college as naval cadets. This one is ugh. Ministry of Justice pays William's Duchy £1.5 million a year to use Dartmoor Prison. Part of the profits from his duchy come from the continuation of imprisoning people. I don't know if this is technically a for-profit prison, but it's certainly profiting William. There's so much more in this piece, but this is just initial reactions. I'm of course going to look at the coverage by the British media and royal reporting, although I don't expect much. I expect that this will be swiftly cast aside or ridiculed, ignored, or someone will send some intrepid reporter to Montecito and see if Meghan's wearing a $500 organically raised woolen sweater while hiking or something like that. The thing is, when you really get down to the money aspect and where the royals put their money, it casts a really different light on what they say they're about, and also their limitations. Because a lot of times we hear, well, they can't do that. They're not the government. They can't be in politics. Well, you know what they could do? They could give up their duchies or part of their duchies, accept a fixed income, because nobody needs this much money. And remember, it's on top of the money that they get from the sovereign grant. I think that's part of the reason why William's documentary fell a bit flat. How can you talk about we can solve homelessness when you could make one of the biggest impacts? I really think that if the royals made some changes and said we don't want to be exempt from certain tax laws, or we are going to show our tax returns every year, we will show that I feel like there are so many little things that they could do that would kind of quell people who are like, I'm not really into the monarchy because of all the finance stuff. Like, oh, why do we pay for this? I think it would go a long way. And it's so weird to me that they won't take those steps. But maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it shouldn't be at the end of the day when there's money involved. Or it shouldn't be when you don't have a press that will hold you accountable. They don't want to risk it either because they make money off of you. There's going to be so much more to come. I need time to go over everything, but I will be back with more videos.
And this is the problem. This is the problem because, there's so much in there. The fact that this report is available to people, I don't see how this can be good for them. They may be able to not letting certain part of their population in the island to actually hear this, but the world knows about it now. The world know about it now. Do you understand what I'm saying? And how can you, obviously we don't know if that prison that supposedly is making money allegedly, if it's for profit, but from what we know, many of these prisons, even here in the state, are for profit. And who's paying the price? Who get the money by incarcerating a lot of Black and Latino people? So is that the case over there? Is that the case over there? It's almost like what I feel like is happening. That competition tried to compete with Harry in the world stage. Maybe perhaps he think if he does this so-called the homeless situation, maybe people will love him, accept him, say bravo, kudos to you. They don't have the foresight to see something is not working out. In the meantime, we have that woman who's wearing all the tiara and they need to start counting. Because she's not letting anybody wear the tiara because Kate is not around to wear the tiaras anymore. I've not seen so many of the other royal ladies wearing the tiara before. Like, who's counting? Who I really want to know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what's so funny, in my opinion, just my opinion, I don't think it's opinion of the Sussex World or even you guys here, it's just my own opinion. She's wearing pretty much many of the pieces Queen Elizabeth have worn. And yet, she make no impact with them. I don't even, it's barely, only if you're looking for it, you're like, oh, right, she wear that. Oh, that's, Like it's a completely something very different. There is, in my opinion, a devalue of what these things supposed to look like or representing. Like, it's as though that, you know what, hey, I'm gonna make you see. Oh yeah, you love Diana. Oh yeah, you wanted her to be, queen. Oh yeah. Well, guess what? Look at me. Like, I feel like her whole agenda, in my opinion, and I don't know that to be true, is just like a, sort of, what word people will actually use, stick it. Stick it to everyone or anyone that who has dare to criticize her or pretty much not accepting her. At least that's how she felt. That you going to, like, it's, to me, it the way I'm looking at that woman is that she literally have no interest on the work and what it represents, but that I'm going to stick it to you. And then, of course, I have the people that, I need to back me up, that's going to give me a pass on everything. Because, again, hear a story about Charles, about, sort of his son, William, and that woman was left out. That woman was left out. Who is she? I need someone to answer that. Who is she? Because she's a part of it. She called herself queen. They tell us to call her queen, which means she has something to do with many of these things that is going on, because she have been beneficiary of all of it, including wearing all those tiara, the diamonds, and everything else. Her kids have been benefiting from it. How was she being left out? Because as far as I'm concerned, is the three musketeers, the three, whatever you call them. Who is this woman? Why was she left out on that report? I want to know, because I'm still trying to figure out who is she that's wearing that tiara? Who is she? Why no one is answering that question? And then, of course, with the election coming up, where it is massive, is a big scandal. It is a scandal. If there was any time there's a scandal, bombshell, like they like to put everything is bombshell, this is the one. And I could almost guarantee by Wednesday, we will not hear or see it, none of it. But it'll come back. So unless you guys have something to say, we're going to pretty much move to, verse. Or if there's anything our co-hosts have to say.
There is. And just to, there's been, as to tie a connective there, there's been a lot of comments shared about the fact is the UK people, the people of England, need to decide that enough is enough and actually act. And to an extent, there's truth to the fact that, like, an American can't decide that they don't want King Charles anymore. We already decided that about the British monarchy a while ago. But to tie that to what Sylvia Fielder added about American people need to stand up and go and vote, there is a truth to the sort of interconnectedness on the world stage, and that values and how we relate to each other, all of those, the tonality is set from the top.
Absolutely.
And so this election in the U.S., it has
representation
direct
matter.
It
Representation matter, because I remember when President Obama elected, there was a lightness after he's elected. It's almost like you were able to look at people in their eyes. As weird, as strange that it was, when all you hear people is say, oh, he's so eloquent. As if like black people are not eloquent at all. Do you understand what I mean? It was what stands out to people. How eloquent that he is. He spoke really well. And then somehow, it did reflect on how people see us, whether or not that, we can put a sentence together. Actually, not me, because I can't. But anyway, there was a lightness that come after it. Regardless how you may feel about his administration, regardless what you may think that he did or didn't do, but what he did do is, in the world stage, it's looking at black men in a very different lens. And I feel like I hope we can experience that same feeling afterwards.
Yeah.
With Kamala.
Yes. And as the last contribution for now from the co-hosts before we move on.
Yes.
We have put everyone through a marathon today. Is actually again from Connie and Julie. Thank you so much for the other supers, the second now super sticker, adding that the royal family killed the goose that laid the golden egg with Meghan and Harry. And it's funny because in all of these scandals coming out, can you imagine how much different it would be if they had actually embraced Meghan specifically and Meghan and Harry? It's almost like if there weren't all of this other nonsense happening, if there weren't that sort of treatment of Meghan, then there would be less of a spotlight by so many, less of a critical lens taken to other things that are now getting more.
The contrast could not have been different when you looking at Harry with NATO to Prince Charles and his brother, what the conversation is about them. The trip of his father with that woman. To what happened to Kate. Why nobody's asking about where's Kate?
Where'd Kate go again?
I haven't seen her for how many days now? I want to know. Do you see what I'm saying? The way the work that they are doing. I believe, in my opinion, that will not happen. But Harry should be the one that is the king. For the work that they're doing, truly what they are giving to people, and what Meghan could have done, where Meghan could have taken them, that representation, that word that we use today, that lost opportunity, it's one that I feel like this is a price they're going to pay for a very long time. Because I don't see anyone there until hopefully sort of Charlotte and Louis and all the other one, get to 18 age where maybe perhaps there will be a massive interest. There's no interest on anyone, in my opinion, of course. I don't see it. Are they going to wait for how long, like in 5 years or 6, 7 years when there is an interest with what's happening really right now when you have Harry and Meghan on the world stage like that? And we're talking, people are describing Meghan as when you meet this woman, it's worldly. Worldly. Yeah. This is how people are viewing this woman. How smart she is. How brilliant she is. The icon that she is. I mean, it's going to be tough to fill that shoes.
And like Connie said, they killed the golden goose, really, because that even never mind the money making machine that Harry and Meghan have become and what they do, just the fact that the diversion and the bridge so that the royal family could continue to exist as it has with less eyes on them. And thank you again, Connie, for the third now donation. We truly appreciate it. But she added that for sure Will is using his homeless initiative to get charities to pay to fix houses on Duchy property, adding that the royal family only takes and never pay for the upkeep.
Insane. It is insane. This is what it's almost like, who's talking to these people? Who's advising them? Or are they just all living in a bubble and think no one is noticing, no one cares because they're royal? It is insane. So we're going to move to verse because we have to. Because otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So the first Bible verse we'll talk about is change. I think it's fairly apt for where we are right now. It's James chapter 1, verse 17. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like the shifting shadows.
Amen.
And the next actually is about rebirth, because this is also what we need. He saved us, not because of righteous things we have done, but because of his mercy. He saved us through the washing of rebirth and renewal by the Holy Spirit.
And our hope is that we knew that, we've seen, hopefully, on all fronts, whether it's around the world, whether it's here in the U.S., this Tuesday coming up, a sense of renew, a sense of not concern and worry about, oh my God, do I even want to go out and deal with that? Do I even want to face my neighbor? Do I even want to talk to my neighbors? Because I know for many of us, blacks, dealing with that every day. Should I even drive? Should I take the train? Should I even travel? Because what I am seeing, it's not good. Because the people that were inspiring these people and activate these people to see us and remove our humanity as if like we're not human, it's heartbreaking. It's very difficult. And I think there is need to be a study done about our own mental health, the challenges to constantly feel like you're not enough. And that's what I pray, hopefully will come with the election to elect Kamala Harris, because it's been said, women are the one that's going to change this nation. So I hope this is the beginning of it, starting Tuesday. Josh.
And with that, like you said, Lady Sussex, there will be even more prayer to follow tomorrow on the election eve. But in this moment right now, just a prayer of gratitude, to never take for granted that we have another day before us, that we get to wake up and we have all of the privileges that we are afforded, especially as we mentioned at the top, the fact that we inherited so much benefit and privilege from the work of those who came before us, to have the lives that we have today, to be able to even have the right to vote, something that not everyone in the world today enjoys, and to not take those things for granted, to be grateful for them. And prayers for that solidarity, for that community, prayers of gratitude for those who are working to make the world a better place that we can support with our votes, because the future is coming at us quickly, and it is no longer the future, it is here. And so we depend on those people like Harry and Meghan, to help lead the way and to truly make sure that the future can be one that is more equitable, just, and inclusive, and one that also recognizes our history and where we come from, and that importance of understanding who we are and to have anchors culturally. And so with that, thanks, a prayer of thanksgiving for Harry and Meghan, but also, again, as always, prayers for their safety, for the safety of those who are around them, supporting them, their family, for the entire Sussex squad, and really for all of us as we head into this Tuesday, especially here in the U.S.
And for Mami Dolia. But more so, I want to take this moment to thank you all. Any woman that was in the chat right now, or either are subscribers or Royal Sussex subscriber, you are 60 and plus. I want to thank you. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for the suffering, how much you suffer. The price you pay for me, for us, and for Kamala, for her to be where she's at today. So thank you. And for Royal Sussex Aunt and my aunt and your family members who are probably not going to be there or who are not there to see Tuesday. May the effort, everything they are, everything they have worked so hard for, it's not lost. That we can celebrate, we can call their name. We could tell them to rest in peace now because we have made it. Happy Sunday. May God bless you all. Love win always. Let's celebrate all women for the hard work they continue doing to make Tuesday possible. And I hope we have many more Tuesday, like the Tuesday I hope to have. Thank you. Love win. Tomorrow we're thinking about coming on live and be with you all as we pray, as we talk with each other, encourage each other. Most of all, say thank you to you, women. Goodbye. May God bless you all.